70%, if you look at different numbers, but overall between 70 and 80% of the population were against this reform. People went in the street. There was the unions. It was very well organized, but even with the unions, the organization, the answer was against police violence. We had picture of policemen trying to basically kill the protesters as well. And now what is happening in France with the suburban riots is that a new population is coming in the streets, and this population basically was not concerned or not so much concerned about politics, but they are very volatile, and it's very dangerous for the power because they don't care about what a minister would say, what the union would say, what the political party would say, and now it's maybe a new population joining into the overall mayhem or discontent that we have in France so far. And it's been years and years. Emmanuel Macron could have seen this coming, to be honest, but he decided to push and see how far he could get. And the death of the young Nile was unexpected. And what happened after that was even more unexpected, even by the French intelligence services.
Nick?
I want to encourage audience questions real quick because we do have several members of the French media up here, and so they know what's going on the ground. And you know, there's nobody more capable to answer your questions. You've seen the videos. You've seen, I mean, all the violence going on in the streets. We want your questions. Bottom right-hand corner. We'll be going through them very shortly. Benjamin, welcome back up to the stage. What I want to ask you is, who are the ones that are rioting? Does this have anything to do with France's immigration problem? Is it a cultural clash? Like, what is going on here?
Hello, Nick, Mario, Suleiman, Alexis. Bonjour, comment ça va, monsieur? So the answer is I'm not sure. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a cultural, if I'm going to be very blunt, right? I mean, simply because they're predominantly North African and happen to be of the Islamic faith, I actually don't think that that's a huge factor in this, but I'm not French. And to be perfectly frank with you, I'm not that up to speed. I mean, I've seen the videos, right? The latest reporting and so forth. I think personally, it's a combination of things, right? You have a Macron who has some issues with his policies regarding retirement. I mean, and the reporting is pretty damning, right? So I don't necessarily think it's a cultural thing. I mean, you can compare it to the Black Lives Matter, right? They weren't Muslim, they weren't Islamic, right? It's just, I believe in any society, when a certain group of people feels, I don't know if you want to call it oppressed, but maybe not heard, this is bound to happen, right? So I think just for the time being, based on what I know, that's all I can really comment on. But thank you for the invitation to speak.
Sure, absolutely. Anna, we'll bring you in here.
Sorry.
There's a ton of background noise, so I mean, I'll bring you in here in just a few minutes. But Mark, I saw you unmute. You are a member of the French media. Can you answer that question? Who are these people? Who's rioting on the streets?
It is a good question. Fundamentally, it seems to be a very disenfranchised group of people, but it ranges. You know, there are some people who get involved just for the sake of getting involved. They see an opportunity. That's a very cynical attitude, I know, but I think there is an element of that about what's happening. There are a lot of people who feel they have no future. There's no investment. There's no real educational opportunity. They're looking for a way out. They basically feel that there's a them and us situation within the country. And you can sort of have all that underpinned.
Well, who's the them versus us, though? Who are we talking about?
I was just getting that.
Are we referring to?
Just getting that.
Okay.
The element of that is that it's all underpinned by a sense, which goes back, I think, to the whole crux of the matter is how France hasn't dealt with its legacy of colonialism. You know, sort of Nanterre, the place in question where everything kicked off, everything began. If you go back to, say, the 1960s, there was a shanty town there, the equivalent of which you would find in, I think, probably somewhere like the township of Soweto or somewhere like that, which was inhabited by people who once upon a time had been part of the French Empire in places like Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and they were just basically herded into these places. France was basically putting people that it really didn't want to welcome into the country, but then kind of felt it had no had no right to refuse them either, into places where they couldn't really integrate. And so that's created a them and us scenario, which has basically persisted from generation onto generation. So you'll find second generation North African descent people who will be saying that they feel more attached to the original home country than to France. It becomes then a question of how do you make your money, how do you get ahead, how do you get a break? And many people turn to criminality along those lines, I suppose. Now, you can say that's a similar story.
Well,
go ahead.
is that a problem though? Because they did immigrate to France, right? For new opportunities, and now you're saying they have to possibly turn to crime to be able to make ends meet. Is that what I just heard?
I think what I was saying was that the opportunities haven't been there for them, and they feel they've been increasingly disenfranchised, and that's led to the situation.
By the way,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a bigger problem, by the way. Like, one question I have for you, and maybe let me see what Suleiman thinks. One explanation I'm thinking of, and I've been thinking about this a lot, Ray Dalio talks about it a lot, is that we're seeing a movement towards populism around the world, and that's led by inequality. I know it sounds less exciting than other reasons people are giving it, but we're seeing the growth of riots around the world. And by the way, France doesn't look like it's in the top 20. I'm trying to see the source of the numbers in terms of the growth in riots. But if you look at the growth in riots, it's pretty concerning. Like, it's a bigger problem than just France having riots because of one issue or issue of race. We saw a growth of 18% in 2012, 21% in 2013, 22% in 2014, 25% in 2015. And it continues going up. And over the past, since 2011, it's a 282% growth in riots around the world. So my concern is that this is part of a bigger movement where inequality could lead to significant instability around the world, and it goes beyond France.
Can I pick up on that one for you? Because I think you said populism is not part of it. I think populism is the crux of the matter, because that is what's sowing the kind of confrontation that we're seeing. If you look at, say, what Bolsonaro has done in Brazil, for instance, putting people against each other with that kind of polemical attitude. You see it with Trump. You're seeing it to a large extent in the UK after the whole Brexit affair. You're seeing it across France. You're seeing it across many places in Europe too. Yeah, I think it's the crux of the matter. This will be my last statement because I have to go to bed because I've got an early start on the beat tomorrow. So thank you for inviting me to take part. Interesting discussion, and good luck to you all.
I can also stress out the age of the writers in France. It's about 70-year-old. So they're the age of Nahel, basically. They are very young, from 11 to 20, 25 and more, but they are
Alex,
kids.
Alex, but I want to link it. Could we see this spread to other countries around France? Is there concerns in countries neighboring France where this issue spreads?
Belgium, there has been some riots yesterday in Belgium, in Brussels. So countries are looking at what's happening in France, of course. But
for what reason, though? Why are we seeing riots in neighboring countries?
I don't know. Maybe because Brussels is the home of the European Commission, and there is also some resentment about European policies in France and other countries. And also that it's a francophone country. I don't have really the answer to that. The fact that there's also a lot of French people being there, or North African people being in Belgium as well, that could be the answer to this.
So just to answer your question, Mario, what you have is a scenario where throughout history it's always been the same, and it's going to be the same now, and it'll also be the same in the future. Whenever there's financial difficulty in society, inevitably what happens is there be a focused attack on minorities, or be a focused attack on people based on race. And that be
but it's more than just race, man. Race plays as a part in it, and I obviously it's an important part and one that should be addressed. And dismissing that, I think, is a bit foolish. And if anyone disagrees, please do jump in. But I'm just saying it's a lot deeper than this. It's a problem that's a lot more significant.
Well, I don't know if it is, because when you look at France as an example, you have this issue where you have a large minority population in France who do not feel like they are respected. You look at a number of issues in France where people feel like they're being targeted. You look at France and there's essentially laws being put in place to target specific communities. And so when you're seeing people, or when these people are seeing themselves being targeted in 2023 and not having any recourse, and then what happens is it always needs some kind of catalyst. Now, I don't agree with the protest. I think like what's happening is horrendous. Like,
Oh, we agree.
things
We
getting
agree. We
destroyed,
agree in protests in general,
yeah,
but not when it becomes violent. But continue.
exactly. But I just wanted to clarify that because
Yeah.
obviously
Okay. You don't
some
want to be
people might not
cancelled.
like
Blah
my
blah
point.
blah. Okay.
So,
Continue though.
no,
Well,
no,
let
not
me
cancelled.
since you kind of since you're trying to hedge yourself, let me tell you this: France is not even in.
No, I'm not hedging myself. I'm going to get to the point. So the issue is quite simple. When you've got a scenario where this populace is being abused, where there's a targeted attack against this populace, and then you have a scenario where a 17-year-old boy was assassinated, essentially, could the police go up to the car and just shoot him? Of course, you're going to get some kind of reaction. And this is the reaction you're getting, where people
Okay, so the first question. Okay. So it just sounds like you just said rallying cry. That sounds really cool, but you didn't answer my question. What I said is it's a deeper problem than just race, and that's why the whole movement of populism, because of inequality. Inequalities is very. If you look at revolutions throughout history, a lot of them were caused by inequality. When the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, that's a very serious problem.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that again now. If you look at the metrics, and again, Ray Dalio is very vocal about it. He's very concerned about it. We are seeing this. It's not getting any better. And then if you look, I looked at two sources so far. In the top 30 countries that have had the most protests, the growth and riots in the last 10 years, France is not even in the top 30. I expected it to be up there. You know, you got obviously a lot of poorer countries way ahead, and I'll probably look at the top 50. But obviously the US is way ahead. You've got India is way ahead, but again, it's per capita, it's poorer than France. I'll try to get the list in Europe is generally doing pretty well when it comes to protests. Now, I'm not saying there's no systemic racism in France. I'm not saying there is or there isn't. I'm not educated enough to answer that. Based on what I've read so far, it definitely seems like there is.
Let me give you an example.
An example is anecdotal. I'd like numbers.
No, I can show you laws as opposed to numbers.
Better. Now, laws is good. Laws, exactly. It's not anecdotal. Go ahead.
So as an example, in Western liberal society, they talk about freedom of speech, freedom of expression. They want women to basically act in a certain manner, remove as much clothing as possible if you feel you want to do so. And yet then you have somebody where a simple headscarf is banned. So again, where is the right of this woman to wear what she pleases? So this is just a minor example of targeted attack against a specific
I have to jump
Please
in because we have this law in France about laïcité, which is very tricky because I think we're the only country with Canada to have that kind of law about religious freedom and faith. And the fact is that it's very complicated to get this and to get this straight. But the idea is that there shouldn't be proselytism in the public sphere, and especially in administration, schools, and things like that. And that's been since the law is back in 1901. It hasn't changed since then, and there's been a lot of debate about hijab and stuff like that. It's slowly moving, but I think it's a law that is trying to make sure everyone can have its own faith and be respected.
Sorry, can I
a lot of loopholes and issues about that.
Hold on, Fraser. I do want to get other thoughts on this. Like, does anyone disagree that populism is a bigger? Hold on, Alexis.
It's wrong.
Yeah. So you just dropped in and out, Alexis. But and by the way, anyone speaking, just unmute when you speak and then mute again, just because some of you have feedback. But the question that I have is, do you think that the world is facing a very serious risk due to the inequality? You know, again, you should definitely read up on it. Ray Dalio has a lot of pieces, but I'm sure there's others. Or the problem is racism, and we're kind of taking it, blowing it out of proportion. Like, my concern, it's a very valid concern, not fear mongering, and that's why I've asked the question. My concern is that it does spread to other countries, and it could start because of racism, but then the core reason is not really racism. It's that it's a concept, is a level of inequality that a lot of the Western world is facing. Now, I don't think this one will spread. I don't think the person, but I think eventually there'll be a riot in a country where people have just had enough of the inequality that exists and it's not getting better, and that starts to spread to other countries and becomes a global riot, a global movement against the system that just isn't working as it should. But does anyone disagree? Does anyone think I'm blowing it out of proportion?
Well, in Ireland, we had similar riots happen to a far smaller scale. We had immigrants attacked somebody in a shop, and then he lunged at a woman with a knife, and then he was shot by the police. And then riots happened in Ireland. Irish people were locked into a shop, and they were like shouting, "Kill Whitey" and stuff. You were talking earlier about colonialism and systemic racism. Ireland doesn't have any of that. We didn't colonize anybody. We were colonized as a people. And this stuff is happening in our country as well. And a lot of it does come from mass immigration and open borders in Ireland anyway. For us, we are seeing people coming from across the world are being stuffed into hotels, 350 of them, and rats breaking out in the hotels with these people. So this does come down to in Ireland anyway.
My question there, and again, this it's gonna be less opinionated and more questions, because I just haven't looked at the statistics to know how big of an impact open borders and immigration has on this. So if you look at the statistics, like if France comes in pretty low, like France is number 39 in terms of the growth and number of riots. If you look at other countries that are facing this, Argentina, Ghana, Azerbaijan, Moldova, Russia, Jordan, these are not countries with open borders. Russia doesn't have open borders. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. Indonesia doesn't have Turkey. Turkey doesn't have open borders. Like they do to an extent, but not as much as countries like France. Egypt, US obviously is a different story, but Brazil. So a lot of these countries, all these are above France in terms of the growth and the number of riots. So then the question will be, if open borders is playing such a big role, why aren't we seeing more riots among Western countries? Only the US is in the top 15, and if you go down in the top 30, I think only the US is in the top 30 in terms of the growth of the number of riots, and that's obviously a separate discussion.
One thing about France is that we have the motto of France is liberty, equality, and liberté, égalité, and fraternity. So equality is very important in France, and we had 1789, the revolution, and it's quite strong in the mindset of the French people. And I think if you read David Graeber, for example, he was talking about the time of the revolution, and revolution comes when the ruling class is completely disconnected and doesn't understand the world or the changes happening in the world. And I think that's what we're seeing in France, a ruling class that is very, very disconnected from the people. And you'll see that in most of the country where you get riots. If you read Graeber, I think it's pretty clear, and it's pretty clear that we are in the age of revolutions. It will take time, but we are changing from the 20th century to 21st century, and things are happening this way.
What do you think, Summer? What do you think? How big of a role? Or Nick, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in real quick. Summer, I'll bring you in right after this, I promise. But I do got to bring George in, who he did actually, he reached out to us and told us that, there are a lot of people in France that have been warning about racial-oriented riots for 30 years. Why was that? How did you see this coming? Does it have to do with immigration policies? Why are we seeing this right now?
Hello, Nick. Thank you very much for giving me the ability to speak. So as I was telling Mario, the fact is there has been so far an analysis of the situation in France that has been described through the prism of economy, the confrontation between the bourgeois and the popular class. This is what happened.
Bourgeois and popular, so the rich and the poor. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah,
let's not commence pas avec le bourgeois et tout ça. Let's keep rich and poor.
Exactly. This is what has been perhaps the case for the Yellow Jackets, and lately the demonstrations about pensions. But what is happening right now in France is totally different. What's happening right now in France is the result of a very favorable policy towards immigration that has started in the 70s, and it has only gone up in terms of numbers. So,
who are the ones emigrating, though? Where are they coming from?
So France basically is becoming, if you want to make a long story short, is becoming the colony of its former colonies. As you know, there was a decolonial movement in the 50s and 60s with the war with Algeria that ended up in 1962. And since then, there were accords that were passed with the Algerian government, the Evian Accords, that enabled the newly formed nation of Algeria a huge easiness on immigration towards France. The first nation that is represented in France immigration is Algeria. So regarding immigration, if you want some numbers, in the years 2000, we had approximately 100,000 immigrants.
So you're saying, but George, just one question. So you're saying immigration is the core reason for this, and less open borders will be the solution? Is that a fair statement? I know I'm simplifying what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Summer, Summer, do you agree? I want to go. Summer, George, I want to go.
You can understand what I'm talking about.
Give us the numbers, and I'll go to Summer right after. Go ahead.
Sure. In the 2000, there was 100,000 people that were coming into France. As you know, the population of France is approximately 70 million people. Okay. In the year 2010, it was 200,000. And now we're around 200, 250,000, counting only legal immigration. So you add up things and you realize that it's approximately 10 million people that entered France since the beginning of the new century. This is absolutely crazy. And these people ended up all in the same place. And you cannot integrate people as a whole, you know, with a big P, like the American people or the French people, not individual people. It's not possible for France.
What do you? Hold on. Let's Summer. What do you think, Summer? Like this statement by Georges, and he's given some statistics as well. How big a role is race playing? Because I know this is a hot issue. I think you guys covered it yesterday in a space. It's a hot issue across the world, not just France.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective as someone who's born and brought up in the UK and who frequently used to visit France, is that, yes, it's a legitimate concern for people about immigration in relation to, preserving their national heritage. However, let's not be, simplistic here and take away the fact that these Western countries in Europe, they benefit hugely economically by bringing over people who will do labor for cheap. In the UK, for example, all the nurses, all the people that pick fruit in the farms, all of the people that are cleaners for these affluent middle and upper class families, they are all immigrants. The indigenous population don't want to do that work. So first of all, economically, the people prosper. Yes, maybe you can talk about that there is, issues with, the indigenous, let's say, Caucasian people thinking that, okay, these people aren't blending in. But then the question is that really what's happening? Because the way I see it, when I was growing up, the people who were from, for example, Pakistan and these kinds of countries, they were the educated lawyers, engineers, and so on, who were brought over to the colonial kind of master nation to bolster the economy. As I mentioned.
Question. Do you think, Summer, just one question to you? So do you think that what immigration should be focused on people, people like myself and you, like highly educated people, and less people like Suleiman that are less educated when they're focusing on immigration? Is that what you're saying?
Not quite, but but what I do think is look, I can understand the perspective of preserving one's national heritage, but one also has to take responsibility for the colonial wars, the extraction of immense amounts of wealth from certain nations. Every single person wants a better life for their children. Everyone. That doesn't matter what color, what religion, whatever. And that's all these people want. And unfortunately, the global north has been extracting wealth from the global south for centuries. And they've left a situation where countries that should be extremely wealthy because of their resources are not, because the wealth has been extracted. And the way I see it is when I go to France, unfortunately, I'll tell you a story that actually is a true story.
Before the story, yeah. I want to get George and Chief's thoughts on what you said, just get a good discussion going, if you don't mind, and then we'll go back to you and you can tell your story. George and Chief, maybe Chief, you can jump in first.
Yeah, so a couple of points here. When we talk about immigration, it's always about the numbers, how much you take in per year. And there has been a large economic interest for corporations to exploit people to make a profit and to import people into countries pretty much with like no limits. We've had increases for years and years. In America, at least, we get 1 million people every single year. And I know for France, they get about 500 1,000 or so refugees, in 2021. This whole talking point, right, about, I guess, how there's some sort of colonialism. Throughout history, throughout time and time again, there's always been people and groups of people who have oppressed and attacked other people in history. You can go back all the way to the very beginning of human civilization. There's always been conflicts and things. We American people or the French people shouldn't be responsible for grievances and things from a certain period of time, when in reality there's always been conflict and problems for years before even that. Before France even a country, there's been problems with other groups of people. We shouldn't be responsible for that. The French government should be responsible for other people. I wouldn't expect the French government to be responsible for Americans or the United Kingdom people or Russians or Australians. I wouldn't expect that. France is a country of the French people. And we should, if you were to go and talk about the economic benefits for that, there's a cost to the economic benefits. And the cost of that is, of course, having a lot of crime, which you've seen a spike in. And for this,
quick question. So your argument is, if you, for example, bomb a country, you're not responsible for the aftermath of what happens in that country. If you basically colonize a country and remember, France will continue to benefit from certain nations in Africa. It's not something in the past, it's right now. You're saying that they should not be responsible completely. First question. And the second question is, when you say French people or French heritage, let's boil it down, because I like these words are always buzzwords. I want you to tell me what you mean by French heritage. What is French heritage? Because I'll tell you, because I don't want to trap you, I'll explain. What do you mean by French heritage? Because man knows, like, French heritage has changed so much and what it is now. So explain what you mean specifically about French heritage as well, both points.
Native French people.
What do you mean by native French people?
Or
indigenous French people, as I would be an
What
indigenous
do you mean
Irish
by
person.
indigenous French
You got to Toby. You got to
people?
Toby. You got to simplify it for Suleiman. He struggles with some English words. Please simplify it for him, guys.
Yeah, please do. Please simplify for all of us. What do you guys mean by indigenous French people? And indigenous from when?
Okay, perhaps I can jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah,
If it's possible.
George.
Okay, there's
Yep.
I will answer the claims of Summer right afterwards, but to answer your question, Ahmed.
Ahmed. Ahmed is better. I like it. Ahmed. Yeah, go ahead. Answer Ahmed.
The fact is, contrarily to a very widespread cliche, France has not been a land of immigration from the 9th century to the beginning of the 20th century. The French population has been relatively stable for approximately 10 centuries. And France began to see waves of immigration in the beginning of the 20th century, starting with the Belgians, then the Italians, the people from Spain.
So the French weren't invaded by, for example, the Vikings and various other nations.
That's what I'm saying. The last wave of immigration was in the 9th century, and it was the Vikings. From the Viking immigration to the beginning of the 20th century, there was no immigration towards France. If you take a look at history books, they won't say the contrary to what I'm saying right now. So that's one thing. Now,
so you've kind of answered his question. So George, I'll let you continue, but you've kind of answered his question of what you mean by native French, correct?
Well, native French are people, some people who have been born in France for now decades, long generations. Some of them go back to very ancient times, and that is what I think.
What do you mean by decade? So, like, some of these minorities have been in France.
The fact is, what you have to understand is that France is a very different country from the United States, which has been a land of immigration almost from its inception, right? What happens in France is that France sees itself as a nation where, in order to become French, and we had this discussion, perhaps you remember, in 2018, when the French team won the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup. And a lot of American commentators said, well, this is not the French team, it's an American team. And the French authorities issued official statements saying, no, these people are French. And this is the very essence of the answer I will give to your question. what
Oh,
happens.
George. So let me
No,
ask that question. No,
if you don't
I
let
like
me
your answer.
finish,
So I'm not.
because it's a difficult concept to grasp. A French person is someone who embraces French history, French literature, French culture, French language. This is what allows you to become French. There are no, let's say, genetic conditions in order to become a French person. The big problem that is here with these riots is that, as I was trying to say in my previous, when I spoke previously, it's the fact that these people refused to integrate themselves to the French society by embracing this literature, this history, this culture, etc., etc. The reason for it, let me just finish this, Ahmed. The reason for it is that at a certain point, the quantity becomes a quality. What I'm trying to say here is that you cannot integrate masses of people. You can integrate individuals, some families, but you cannot.
So essentially, hold on, George. So just to simplify for Ahmed. So what he's saying is that to be considered a French native, I think you need to go back a few generations. Now, exactly.
You can call me Mr. Ahmed.
Mr. Ahmed. So, Mr. Ahmed, if you need to go back a few generations before to consider someone to be French. Now, you might always make the argument that but then that person could have been an immigrant then. So, at the end of the day, an immigrant today could become native later on. But then George made the argument about the Vikings and then the difference between the US and France and their policy.
His argument, I believe, is, George, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to misphrase your argument. His argument is that it's not the time period or how long.
That's the second point. Exactly. He kind of exactly. The second thing George said is like, but also just the having French values and understanding the French culture, which is now becoming.
That's fine. So
they want to keep it white.
Let's talk.
They want to keep it white. Okay, let's just say it. They want to keep it white.
Nothing could be less true than what you are saying right now, Summer. And the fact that you're frustrated at what's being explained cannot be summarized in this.
George, I want to ask you some more questions. No, I want you to continue explaining, because I don't think what you said is problematic. I was expecting you to say why, actually, and you didn't say it. So, I mean, I appreciate your answer. So my point is, George, so you said it's about French culture, right? What is this French culture? Because I've seen French culture, European culture. I'm from the United Kingdom. Even when they talk about British values, so I can explain it. They always told me like British values are important. And British values 10 years ago or 20 years ago was based on Christian values. It was based on monotheistic values. British value now is based on liberal leftist LGBTQ values. So when you say that a person needs to retain culture, what is this culture you speak of?
Can I ask you? I just want to ask you, just Suleiman, when you said that British culture is based on left LGBTQ, I don't know how you mix LGBTQ into this. It's just weird how you just kind of squeeze it in. But then if you look at the percentage, what percentage of sorry? Huh?
Think outside the box.
Think outside the box. No, the point. I just want to hold on, George. I just want to.
You love numbers, don't you? So I mean, you love your numbers. Just to give you a data, in the United Kingdom, we had in 2011, Christianity was the majority religion, and historically, the United Kingdom was based on wars to ensure that Christianity remained as the main.
Well, that applies to different countries and different religions, but finish your point. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So in 2011, you had the scenario where the census showed 67%. I could be a few percent off, so I know you'll want to check that. And then now in the recent census, 2021, just a decade later, you've got a scenario where it's 43%. So it's a drop of 25%. Where has that percentage gone? It's gone to atheism. It's gone to these other things. It's not gone.
Yeah, but look, you said the UK. But look, I'll give you some numbers. You said that the UK. And by the way, I want people in the audience. So I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to go through the comments for a bit to see if people agree with me or you on this one, because you made a statement that the UK is.
No one's going to agree with you on this one.
Can I finish? Okay. You said the UK. The values in the UK now are based on liberal LGBTQ values. Again, you just put that word out there because it's just cool to say. But then I'm like, all right, let me see how many people identify as liberal in the UK? Well, it's 23%. How many identify as conservative? Well, it's 29%.
Fake news. This is about lack of understanding, and I don't blame you if you're not from the United Kingdom.
I don't need to be from there to look at statistics, bro. You just need to know how to read.
No. I'll explain to you. Don't worry, I'm here for you. So when you say liberal, in the United Kingdom, as an example, this organization, that you call conservative, are the very people who put LGBTQ as a law in.
Can you just move away from LGBTQ? I think LGBTQ is not it does not determine if someone liberal or conservative. We're not talking about LGBTQ.
I'm trying to explain to you that even in the United Kingdom, as an example, what is British values? British values, even purported by the right in the United Kingdom, is brainwashing children about LGBTQ values.
Stop it. Okay, look. I'm gonna go. Just in the audience, do you think Mr. Ahmed is just really exaggerating by just kind of making it about LGBTQ? Which I think is this unfair, and just kind of every discussion now is about LGBTQ. What's happening in Ukraine? Well, LGBTQ.
No, I'm not talking about Ukraine. This is not.
Yeah, and I'm saying it's just added to everything.
So you're not understanding, because in the UK, a good way in the UK, what they do is when they come to schools, they do something called Ofsted, where they check schools if they're meeting certain requirements. One of those requirements are British values, and part of British values is this.
Sulaim, the fact is, first of all, I think that you're projecting your own vision of things that might be biased onto a situation that is not even the situation of Great Britain. We're speaking of France right now. And to answer to you very shortly and very simply, even though I already answered your question, I would ask you this very simple question. If you had to take a trip to France, what would you expect to see there if I were to tell you, if you were to tell me, I'm going to France to see French people?
Well, I assume you think I mean white, but no, I would expect.
No. If you want the French experience, what do you expect from the French experience?
Yeah, of course, I'll explain to you. So I look at it and I'd want a diversity of people, a diversity of nationalities.
No, you don't. Silly. Come on, look. If you go to France, you go for the French culture. Look, by the way, we agree on the topic. Like just so you know, Sulaiman, just let me tell you my position before I continue.
Their football team's fully black.
Yeah, but that's not okay. If anyone, I'm gonna be realistic here. I'm gonna go to Concerned, because I think Concerned Citizen is gonna just really explain to you.
George?
Actually, maybe Protocol could destroy you after Concerned Citizen. But let me just answer you first. If I go to France, I'm pro-immigration. I believe I'm very naive. You know, the world is one, blah blah blah. So that's my position on this. But I'm not educated as much as many, including you, Sulaiman. You're more educated about this than I am. But to say that the Sulaiman, when I go to France, someone goes to France to see multiple cultures and diversity, I don't mind it. Like, this is great, and I don't do tourism. I hate tourism. But generally, if someone goes to Peru, they're expecting a certain experience to when they go to Switzerland or France. I think each country has its own culture. I know it's pretty vague to define, but generally speaking, diversity is not part of the culture, if that makes Concerned Citizen. Maybe you can explain it better than I am.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I mean, I'll give you my very quick experience of what I expect when I go to France, and that's fine wine, croissants, beautiful food, restaurants, architecture. The people surrounding and making up the country, regardless, it doesn't matter. We live in a multicultural world. What we need to do is obviously have respect for each other. Now, there's a clear argument around what's happening at the moment, and I just want to bring it back to the riots in a minute, and just to make it clear, there's a clear difference between what illegal immigration is and what economic migrants are, which is what we're seeing across the whole of Europe in swaths, in probably more significant numbers than we've ever seen before. But just to bring it back to a second, if we can, because it's very interesting that the terminology has changed, because France has probably, since post-COVID, seen the most protests in Europe, bar a couple of countries, Hungary, Serbia, Czech Republic. But we called them protests. And I think one weekend there was an estimated 9 million, I know clearly that figure can't be verified, but 9 million people across major towns and cities throughout the country out in force protesting Macron's pension reform. Now, that was probably the catalyst at the time for that. In behind that, you had all the tyrannical, authoritarian lockdown vaccine measures, which probably contributed to those mass-scale protests. What we're seeing now is entirely different. It's entirely different. So just to give you an example, a couple of weeks ago, you probably saw it, the horrendous, brutal stabbing of several babies in Annecy, however you pronounce it, apologies. But there was no real reaction to that, where there was no real revolt. Yes, there was anger and outrage, but there was no real revolt. What you've seen post the shooting of the 17-year-old boy is from a different French demographic on a completely different scale, which is why we're calling it riots now. You're seeing shootings, lootings, infrastructure being taken down, cars being burnt. Whereas the previous protests, they were people from all walks of life in France just taken to the city to make their voice heard. And yes, there were clashes with the police. We saw those. But by and large, you didn't see the large spread damage, fire, destruction, violence that you're seeing with these protests right now. And
but what's the reason for that? That's
that
the
makes
question.
me think it's something entirely different.
Well, the thing that's entirely different is that the French society, unfortunately, does suffer with a lot of racism. The law banning women from wearing headscarves, the way how women were dragged off the beaches just for covering their body and not wearing a bikini. These images are all online. You can see them by the police. The heavy-handedness that's applied to ethnic minorities, it's really disturbing. I myself, when I went to France last time, I vowed never to visit there on holiday there, even though I love Paris so much. I love the architecture, I love the museums and everything, because I was in a shopping center and the bunch of skinheads, they started following me and intimidating me, and I was just
sorry.
like,
I don't think we want to. I don't think we really want to be turning.
You don't think you want to hear something that's actually
into
an eyewitness account of something that's happened to me when I'm a speaker on here, just as you are. I'm giving you an eyewitness account.
Yeah,
and
that's fine.
Something
and you can,
to do with
you
the
can,
laws
you can
in
get
France.
That,
the laws
get that
in
every
France are
country these
racist.
days.
The laws in
That-
France
that's-
are racist.
that's-
Militant.
That's just a
militant
ridiculous statement to make,
secularism-
I'm afraid.
Hold on. Militant secularism is not secularism. Militant secularism is you strip people of their identity by using the label of secularism. True secularism is live and let live. That is not what happens
Sorry,
in France.
So what identity are they
France,
showing
it's
when they
the
burn
laws
down
problem.
school buildings and burn down hospitals and attack?
Crazy.
What identity are they showing? Is that the identity that they're showing now when they're burning down schools and hospitals and everything else?
I don't
You're
defend the
conflating
violence,
many things.
but I do.
Europe is not a melting
yes,
pot.
yes.
Europe is not the U.S.
Can I just finish on
France
one
can
final
trace
point,
its
Mario,
history back to the Gauls, etc. And the reality of the matter is, the West is going to have to wake up that they owe nothing to no one. Most of these migrants, as we
They
said
owe nothing
before,
to no one because
they're economic
the
migrants.
resources.
They're not even refugees. France, Germany, the U.S., they're not glorified Costco memberships. They have tradition, culture, and heritage, specifically Europe.
Correct.
Cultures that have lasted for millennia.
It was
that
nice
may
the
well
way how
disappear.
Macron was surveying
And they've sold this to import these populations. Yeah, I'll finish. I don't care. You can scream as much as you want to. Import these populations while their native countries are not cozying up to the West. They're cozying up to the East. So we owe them nothing. And on top of that, as hard as it is for people to hear, if you come from a cartel country or a war-torn country, you cannot integrate vast swaths of military-age men into a highly functional capitalist society. You can't do it in large numbers.
Except
You're seeing
when
it
it
in
helps
Europe
the
now.
economy,
And
of
everything
course.
they promised to you, they lied. Because in Europe, they said it fixed the pension situation. Guess what? Untrained labor that doesn't mix with the culture doesn't fix anything. They actually made the pension situation worse. Same thing that's going on in the U.S. and Canada. So the reality of the matter is, they try to weaponize your empathy against you when these people literally want to destroy you. And they use your empathy to do this. Nobody's saying don't let in refugees who deserve it. Nobody's saying don't have immigration. But when your civilization is literally falling and you have people justifying mass anarchy, chaos, destruction with no justification.
Who's justifying the anarchy?
You're showing your identity, right? We're burning churches. We're killing
Prodigal,
priests.
that didn't happen in the
Don't
US.
act like
There
this
wasn't
is
BLM.
something that's peaceful.
Prodigal.
You
There wasn't
just
BLM.
started shouting over what I was saying.
There wasn't
And
BLM.
France, Germany.
Hold on,
they
Prodigal.
said
Let's Summer. I'll let you.
You want to make that argument for America? Make it all you want.
So, Prodigal, good to have you back. Summer, I'll let you respond and then give back to Prodigal.
Okay.
It's like
he went off on one without knowing my full.
I'll let you make your. I'll let you
position.
make a point. I'll let you make your point. Go ahead. And you, by the way, you don't know how similar you and Prodigal are. I think you'll take that as a compliment. Go ahead.
Yeah, when the Mongols give the Baghdadis,
Oh God,
reparations.
here we go.
Go ahead,
Prodigal
Summer.
goes
Go
off in
ahead.
it for 5
Summer, go ahead.
minutes.
Go ahead.
Okay, look. Prodigal wasn't here in the beginning where I said my position. My position is that I do not agree with violence. That's the way how it's taken hold. I think that immigration is a legitimate concern for nations to preserve their national identity. However, I also think it's important to look at the fact that these Western nations are not innocently bringing people over. It bolsters their economy to do the scummy jobs that their indigenous populations don't want to do, and it actually impacts their economy in a positive fashion. Now, when it comes to social cohesion and economic problems, it doesn't matter which country you have. If you have economic woes and you have the Great Reset and you have the cost of living crisis and all of these types of things, you are going to have civil unrest. It doesn't matter what color those people are.
And what you have to do is try to connect the dots, right? When you're
Please
importing milk,
please don't
let's
patronize
take
me.
America for example. When you import 5 to 6 million illegals on top of 1 million plus legal immigrants you let in, and then you wonder, well, why isn't the rental and lease price going down? Why aren't food costs going? You're competing with them. They might be bolstering the GDP, but they're literally killing the native population's ability to buy homes, to buy food, to
So
buy
the government
necessities.
should do
What
something
the West
about it then.
offers, and the left tries to pretend they don't like.
No,
This is
then
what the
the
West
government
offers.
should look
They
after their
offer you to
nation.
compete with the international wealthy for your home price.
So then
They
the
offer you
government
to
should put
compete
in
with third
policies to
wage
help their
illegals
nation.
for your wages. And for
It's not
culture,
the.
it
It's
doesn't
not.
exist. You
Hold
get
on,
an
hold on,
economic
hold on.
Costco
You
membership,
just said
and everybody's the
illegals.
same.
You're mixing up so many issues. It's unbelievable. There's a difference between a refugee.
I just think I cut through it pretty well. Both sides are benefiting.
Go ahead, Summer.
He just mixed up so many things. There's a difference between a refugee, an immigrant, and an illegal. They are
Yeah,
three different
and how is the law
One second,
weaponized? You ever hear a law fair? Do you understand how the refugee process, catch and release is? You act like NGOs.
Protocol. Yeah, thanks for muting Protocol. Go ahead.
NGOs aren't dedicated and weaponized against the West asylum.
Go ahead.
Who's being a child now? You want to have a serious discussion?
All right, go ahead, Summer. Go ahead. I'll let you respond.
You literally have the Catholic Church
Protocol.
and fucking the Open Societies Foundation and a number of other NGOs weaponizing immigration and refugee laws.
All right, go ahead, Summer.
All right, okay, right. Like I said, he just mixed up several things, and it's not helpful because you're lumping together 3 or 4 categories of people. First of all, it is
the world doesn't live in a vacuum. It's multifaceted.
Protocol. You gotta have a protocol. You have to protocol. You gotta have a response. Protocol, please. You have to have a response, man. Please go ahead, Summer.
Right. First of all, it's the government that has to look after the policies for its people. So if you want to blame somebody, the first person you need to blame is your government. Your government.
Yeah, nobody in the West is a fan of the government.
Protocol, please. You gotta have a response.
What the hell?
I do want you. I do want a back and forth protocol. So please.
God.
I apologize. I didn't know if she had permission.
Oh, good. Okay. Go ahead, Summer.
Oh my God. Thank you. That's a compliment. Right. Anyway, moving on. Right. So the first thing is that the government is supposed to look after its population. It's supposed to put in policies. So they are the first people you should blame. The second thing is once people are there legally, the statistics show that they contribute to the economy. Now, whether in a long game situation, as Prodigal's outlining, that's a negative or a positive, again, that is something that the government needs to look at. What is wrong is putting in racist policies for the people who are now your citizens, who pay their taxes and contribute to your society. How does that help anything? And the final point, which I must make, is I'm really getting fed up with all of the people pouncing on this situation to sow divisions between races and religions. That is not the main issue here. The main issue here is socio-economic underpinnings with issues of race in relation to brutality with certain ethnic minorities. It's a combination of factors. And that's what I've got to say about it. So,
they don't have much control over their governments if they shut down their own nuclear plants and beat up their own farmers for trying to keep their farms open, right? You're talking about these governments as if they haven't been co-opted by the same NGO, CFR that helps push this illegal immigration. These populations have actually benefited more than the native population from these organizations you rail against that we also hate.
So
I don't agree with that. I think the thing is you've got the EU.
I wouldn't expect you to. You benefit.
Yeah, that's fine. So why don't you let me respond to it, right? The EU, look, these countries are giving up their sovereignty voluntarily to international bodies, and they then have to implement those policies, and they're doing it of their own accord. This is not the problem of the immigrants who are usually from poor socio-economic demographics, who are just trying to make a life and not be treated as second-class citizens, as underlings, and be subject to racism every day. The buck rests with the people in control. It's
Summer,
as simple
what
as that.
are
And if
these
you can't get
racist
Can I
laws
can I
that
jump
you're
in?
your
talking
fault.
about? Because you've mentioned that several
I?
times. Can you just, in 30 seconds before I go to Alexis, what sort of racist laws are you referring to? Just 30 seconds, please. Go ahead.
Well, it's something that would apply to me if I lived in France, which is I wear a headscarf. In any public building, I cannot wear a headscarf. If I choose to cover my body on a beach in a bikini,
No.
I can get dragged by the police. You can see these videos online. And
Well,
the
it's
French
not.
people, unfortunately, have not tried
Alexis,
to
is
help
that
women in having
Come
go
on,
ahead,
rights.
Alex?
come on.
Go ahead,
Correct.
Alexis. Go
I
ahead.
need to jump
Go
in
ahead.
because it's the same issue we had before, and we're far from the riots here. But it's not racist laws or whatever. It's about the freedom of faith and the fact that you don't have to. I mean,
It's
every country have
militant
laws. Come on,
secularism.
let me finish, please. If you go in Saudi Arabia or if you go in Kuwait or whatever, there are several rules that you have to follow. It's not, and you don't say that they are racist over there. You just follow the rules. It's cultural, and it's the main issue is about culture. It's not about religion or races. It's about culture. Either you believe in the culture or you want to say, okay, I'm not 100% pro what France is proposing, but I think I'm good here, and let's go. The issue in France is, of course, there is some racism in society, and we've seen it with the Nahel case, but with other cases we had before. But you can't say that France has racist laws. I don't think that that's the case.
Alexis,
You can say that there is some racism in society, okay, sure, but go in any country in the world and you will find racism.
but
Not just
Alexis,
in
Listen,
France.
she could make a better argument if
And
she
once
talked about the
again, I want
colonial
to say,
French franc,
No,
the
but
intervention in Sierra Leone and other colonies, but the argument she's making sucks. I can make better
you
arguments than
can't
that.
even
so
summarize my
Prodigal,
argument, Prodigal, because you keep
1 second.
jumping to
Summer and
conclusions. So
Prodigal, 1
please
second,
don't
1
try and
second.
summarize me.
Okay, guys, 1 second. Listen. So, look, another point I want to make is, and maybe some of you might get upset or offended. Let's be clear. In the Western world, including the United States, where 42% of your Gen Zs are basically identify LGBTQ plus,
Okay,
what's
all right.
happening? The
Just to be clear
Caucasian.
here, that statistic is false. But go ahead. Go ahead.
So, what's the actual number then, Nick?
It's
How
closer
is
to
it false?
20%.
We can all
I
agree
believe,
it's
but
not trending amazing.
What? What do you say, Nick? What's the number?
it's closer to 20%, I believe. But I don't have that in
Even
front
that's
of me.
huge, bro.
It is.
Like, I
It's
don't think
pretty
that's right.
big.
I've seen the data. Anyway, post your data, but I've seen 40%, but that's fine. It's still big. Like, I wouldn't laugh that off. 20% of your population, majority of women, have been taken out of the populace. What is going to happen? Because everyone's like saying it. What's happening? The white population is dying. You have a significant population collapse. What is it? 1.1 birth rate per every single
Yeah,
family.
but why do you sound
That
so
can't
happy
maintain
when
the
you say that?
population. So what happens, Prodigal, when you're basically unable to maintain your own
Perhaps
population?
I
You're gonna
can
have to
jump
bring it
in
in,
to answer.
isn't it?
You rework GDP. You stop using these fake statistics that don't reflect
try to
if your average citizen's life is actually benefiting from your policies.
So when you have a
Who
scenario
cares
where
if
you're not
GDP
having
grows
children,
if
Prodigal,
more products are sold
Prodigal,
and
if you're not
bought
having
if you have
children,
20 million
what
illegals
happens?
buying those products?
Well, Prodigal, if
They
you're not
have to
having children,
refocus
your
what they.
population collapses, you die
No,
out.
but
What do you need to
Japan's
do?
dealing with it. Other countries are
What do
going
you
to have
need to
to deal
do?
with it.
What do you need to do? When all your women turn
Suleiman's made an excellent
LGBTQ,
point.
when your women
It's
all
And
turn LGBTQ, you got no
I'd like
kid. What's going to
I'd like
happen?
to try and answer
There
that
That's
is
why
a
we
question.
got
birth
Russia,
rate.
Ukraine. There's going to be a lot of women left over when that's done.
No, but
Oh, so you're
look,
going to import them in, but you just want the whiteys.
look,
Is that what you're saying, Prodigal? You're going to
Mr.
import
Ahmed,
Ukrainians in for their whiteys.
Listen, I'm
Yeah?
just saying, there's a silver lining in
I
everything.
get
You
you. I
think
get you. You want to immigrate. You want white is to get immigrated in, but not black people. I get it. I
No,
get
but
it.
Well,
listen,
listen, I mean, try.
listen. The
It is
problem,
what it is.
the
I feel
problem
you.
here,
I feel you,
the
bro.
problem here is you are trying.
They're actually from a war
The
zone,
idea,
Suleiman.
the idea.
Oh, right, so it's war zones. You know, there is war zones in Syria and these other
Or,
countries, Prodigal. You know, that's not the only
I'm
war
Listen,
saying,
zone
if
in
the
the world,
Arabs
bro.
don't want to take, like the Gulf seem pretty rich. I mean, Qatar seems pretty rich.
I
Why
mean,
don't the Arabs take them in? I mean, how many countries did the Palestinians
I
get
mean, I
taken in
agree
and they
with you
kicked them
there.
out?
I
I don't know,
agree with you on the Arabs.
Jordan,
Like,
Lebanon, Egypt.
I mean,
Like
Prodigal, I
it is
agree
what
with
it
you.
is, and I got no
I
problem with
agree
it. I
with
have a
you.
lot of
I
Arab
agree with you
friends,
on the
but let's just be honest.
Arabs. Why aren't they taking them in? I wrote a thread on it. Why the Arabs and these other
The
nations are not
Turks have
taking
done
them in?
more than
They've
the
got
Arabs
huge
have.
problems. They've got huge problems. The difference is that coming from the West, our values are much more better. In the United Kingdom, our values are much more better. We do have a scenario in the UK and the US where you have a multifaceted, multipolar society and community. That's what makes us different. And actually, there's actually a deep reason why we are in the West, in the UK and America and these countries are much more successful than other countries is because of this diversity.
no, that's
When you look
false.
at basically ethnocentric
That's false.
nations such as the
That's
Arab world,
again a
and you have
one-sided analysis
and you
that
see
is
that, and you
through your
and one
ideological
second,
prism. That
George,
So
let me
you're saying
finish
illegal
my
you couldn't be
immigration is
more
the
wrong,
key
so,
and
to
I'm going
American
to tell you
when
why.
you got ethnocentric,
I,
when you've got an ethnocentric nation such as the Arab world, such as Asia, you have a scenario where they don't do as well. So Joe, go ahead. Where you had your hand up.
Well, you can't say that
I'm going to
Korea
tell
is
you
not
why.
going
The
well. I
fact
mean,
is now
I mean, Korea's birth rate is like
the
0.4,
wealth,
bro. They're
the wealth,
dropping hard.
the wealth.
Korea is not
If you
birth
don't
rate
let
is
me
0.4.
answer,
What do you
I'm
think
not
happened
going
to
to
their
be able to
populace,
make a
George?
point. So
Well, you interrupted me, George. Do you think that you have the right to interrupt me? Let's
no,
finish my point, isn't it? I'm gonna
you
go
were
to
in
Joe.
a ping pong with Prodigal, and I was trying to fit in.
Yeah, and you wanted to jump in. Just wait your turn. Joe, go ahead.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I just think some of the comments that were being said about as if the U.S. is like a shining beam of light here. We had BLM, which were the race riots. We had a problem where they were banning certain people. I really don't think it's the shining light. It's kind of like the same thing that happened in the U.S. is now happening in France because. And I don't understand how I almost feel like it started in the U.S. and it's spreading to other nations. To be honest,
So that might be an analysis, but the analysis through which you would say that it's diversity that makes these countries strong, it couldn't be more false for one reason. These countries didn't become strong since immigration started in these countries. These countries skyrocketed from the other nations and the West more generally. In order to understand really how it happened, you have to go back to the Renaissance. It's at the Renaissance that these countries and the West, generally speaking, made technical advancements that allowed them to go beyond what other nations could do. That's the real explanation. These countries didn't become bright as following what you're trying to explain since immigration started. Immigration started because these countries represented an opportunity, economically speaking, for other people from other civilizations to come. They would have never come to a country that doesn't represent an opportunity for them to become richer, to have more comfort in life, etc., etc. So that's one thing. Second thing about the numbers, actually, there were no numbers that were given because it's always big declarations without any numbers behind. The fact of having immigration, and I will speak about France because I don't know the situation in other countries, but very quickly, actually, about Great Britain. I think Great Britain voted a law, they passed accords with Rwanda to export immigrants, to put them in planes and put them in Rwanda because they didn't not want them any longer in Great Britain. This is something that you're not saying when you're speaking, and that is facts. Second of all, please let me finish my point. Second of all, about immigration in France, going back to the subjects. What happens is that when you take a look at the employment rate in those immigrated Arab and sub-Saharan populations, the level of unemployment is the highest in the country. For example, the Algerian population is 42% unemployed in France. That's the first thing. And second of all, when you want to analyze immigration, you have to take a look at two factors. You have to take a look at the pull factor and the push factor. The pull factor is what attracts people to your country. The push factor is what pushes people out of their country of origin. And when people from Africa come to Europe, they're not stupid people. They take a look at the advantages that each country in Europe can give them. And France is the country in Europe that gives the biggest advantages to immigrants. France is spending in social expenses as much as what the United States are spending on their army. That is more than 80 billion euros. Do you realize the craziness of this? When an immigrant arrives in France, he can get what we call the RSA, meaning basic income, even though it doesn't work. He can touch many subsidies from the state in order to help him. When he lives in these suburbs where the riots are happening right now, he also has access to easiness of property, because we have a law in France that is called the Loi Dallot, that is an opposable right to having a house. And these immigrants get a house through this system. So if people that follow the kind of ideology that I start to understand you are following will say, well, we've put them in ghettos. No, we haven't put them in ghettos. We've built a lot of buildings around Paris and around Marseille in the 60s and the 70s because the economy was booming in capitals and in urban areas.
No,
It's not.
I want to.
Points, Georges, and then I'll pass
Can
it to
I
Alex.
ask George
So
a
Georges,
question?
Of course you can. And can I just come back on him as 2 points, and then I'll let just
Sure,
the UK
of
one,
course.
and then I'll pass it over to you. So 2 points. First of all, let's not pretend about the that it was because of the revolution. You guys colonized country after country, stripped it of the resources. Let's not forget about
That's
that.
after
Yeah?
the
And the
Moors
second point,
failed,
I
the
mean,
Turks
you
failed.
stripped it of
I
the
mean, you guys
resources.
started this
And the
shit. We were
second
just
point
better
is,
at it.
and
You
the
can't
second
have
point
the
no, 1 second,
Moors,
Porter.
the
Porter, let me
Turks,
finish my
the
point,
Barbary
bro.
pirates. Was the world a civilized place? No. Who civilized it? The West.
Right. Anyway, so let me come to my point. So the second point is in terms of what you said about United Kingdom and Rwanda. I mean, don't attack my country, bro, because the court in the United Kingdom said it was illegal just 2 days ago to send people to Rwanda, because that's the brilliance of the United Kingdom. And let me pass it over to Anna. Anna, go ahead.
So I just have a couple of questions to George. Question number one is he's saying that, the refugees and the immigrants are, being kind of assimilated in the French society, which is kind of not true, because you guys did put them in suburbs really, really far away from the cities. The unemployment is extremely high because people don't have access to jobs, education. They don't have access to education.
Why, Anna? Why?
Let me finish, please. Just let me finish. Let me just say this. I am against illegal immigration. I'm an immigrant in the United States. We came here legally, so I'm against illegal immigration. But with that said, what's happening in France? It's not just a racial protest. What's happening in France is just protests with overall failed policies by Macron, which is immigration policies, it's foreign policies. People had bad enough. There is humongous inflation. I have really close friends that live in Paris. They're saying inflation is out of control, food prices out of control, gas, electricity prices out of control. And all of this combined together, it does affect people who live below poverty level in those suburbs of France. So that's A. B, I would like to say that, you're saying that all these immigrants come and they get a lot of things, which they do. But we also know that France is sitting on the biggest gold reserve in the whole Europe. And France does not have gold mines, right? So France was getting this from the colonized countries that they did. Little fact, that in 1914, just from one country in West Africa, France was collecting 3.5 billion francs a year annually, which is huge. So France have stole from those countries, and just like not Nazis, Germans are giving back to Jews with Holocaust reparations. I think this is kind of fair. Another point that I would like to make, and this is a very important point, is that
By the way,
we're
Germany has the highest gold reserves. If France
so
isn't even in the top 3.
Yeah, I think they just have they used to have custody under the old colonial
I
Frank
don't.
zones. Yeah,
Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm
But
pretty sure you
with
are. But continue.
It is. It is. Gold reserves by country.
so
Google gives you United States, then Germany, then Italy, then France.
okay,
So Anna,
I
yeah,
apologize.
Anna, let me ask
But
you a
hold
question.
It's
on,
not a
one
big
more,
deal. Let her make her point.
one more thing, and that with refugee crisis, I mean, we have to take responsibility for refugee crisis, right? We bombed the shit out of Middle East. Where do you think those people are gonna go? That's it. I'm done.
All right,
Okay,
Anna,
okay.
I have the
Can
pressure.
I can I jump in?
I have
Can I just
Who's
I
we?
have
Who's
so
we?
many questions
yeah?
here.
Where's the U.S.?
We, United States,
yeah,
Britain,
The
France, no?
coalition.
France and
The
Libya. France and
coalition.
Libya.
Yeah,
But
yeah, but
Ireland
Anna,
Can,
agreed
can
to
I
France and
non-immigration
Libya,
as
yes.
well, and we did not bomb anyone.
Anna,
can
Ireland
I
is not.
jump
We
in?
didn't colonize anybody, but we're facing
No
mass
one's talking
immigration as
about
well.
Ireland, bruv.
Yeah, but I'm Irish, and I
Oh
was
my
brought on.
God.
We're talking about mass immigration. Ireland now, we took
You need to tell your
220.
politicians. What's it got
Just
to do with the
We
rest of
have
the
been.
world?
We've been out protesting. We've had 150 protests the last 7 months, and no violence. The only violence came from far left agitators, and that's what we've got here as well. You've got immigrants that are protesting against the death, and then you've got far left agitators and NGOs are coming in and spicing it up and making it worse.
Listen, the reality of the matter
Let me
is
go to
hard
Alex.
times are
can
coming,
can I?
right?
Yeah,
Germany's
let's
in
go
a
to.
recession. The UK is doing bad. There's not going to be all these funds for law enforcement, for schools, for pensions. Like, people don't realize they're looking at this like it's a one-off.
Prodigal in
There's
the UK.
major
Who's coming in?
economic issues that are going to
Prodigal,
worsen
who's
the
coming in the
situation.
UK? Prodigal coming in
Can
the
I
UK.
just?
Where's the immigration coming from into the UK?
Alexis, you
So,
have a lot of
so
background
let's be
noise.
clear.
I
In the
can't get
UK,
to it until
we've
you
had
get rid of the
more.
background noise, Alexis.
Well, I can. There's a huge amount of background
Yeah.
noise. Sorry. I'm gonna. So in the UK, there has been more immigration from Ukrainians in the last 2 years than any other country for the last, I think it was 7 or 10 years combined.
What's the number one baby name, out of curiosity?
Sorry, I have no idea what the number one baby name is, but maybe what
For
maybe
London,
you need a
variation,
Caucasian.
top 3.
I mean, this is what I was saying. You need the Caucasian population, which sadly I'm actually sad about. But the Caucasian population is collapsing, so maybe you need to start having some babies. Prodigal, get your people out there. Alexis, go ahead.
Yeah. Just before I go, and I want to thank Mario, Nick, Suleiman, all of you for having me on this space. I think we are losing the plot. Of course, there was colonialism, and France was a big colonialist country, and of course there is this kind of resentment, and the number one resentment being Algeria, because there is still a lot of things that need to be dealt with. But it's not about coming back and saying, okay, no, we're in the country and we need to say that we want our money back or something like that, and we want our life back. Of course, I think France has a lot to do talking to these countries and making sure that especially Africa is no more sort of a colonial landscape, because we're losing ground anyway, French as a power in Africa, to the Chinese, to the Russians, because of this cultural mindset. But I think back to the point, the economy really is the main point. I think if these population coming from the former colonial countries had a chance to get a life and a proper life and come into the middle class and the rich class, that would be very different in France.
Yeah, but you can't sacrifice the life of the natives when their opportunities are vanishing.
They're not. When we're not sacrificing.
They're not. How
the
easy
life
is it to buy a
of
house
the
in London?
native. No,
or
there is
England,
this
or in
big.
Canada? What are you
No, come
talking
on. No, there is no. It's not. I mean, I see a lot of neocons trying to speak about the French riots. Saying
Yeah, I'm
that
not a neocon.
it's
I
really
hate
coming in.
neocons. I don't like
No,
W. I think you should work.
No, but I'm not talking about you. But I have seen a lot of issues about this is a civil war starting in France. I don't think it's the case at all. I think it's something about the buying power, the fact that you can't buy stuff, and you see that people are rich and you're not, and you maybe you're trying. There's also a lot of traffic, and we haven't talked about the mafia and the drugs issue in France, especially because it's linked with this traffic as well. And the fact that a lot of people in France are living because of the parallel economy and the drug traffic, and that's it. But it's not
And
a civil
who are
war.
these people,
It
Alex?
could be.
Who are these people?
Which people?
The
The
people
people
you're talking
in
about.
the suburbs.
Be precise.
Well, I'm talking about the people in the suburbs. Like if you go in Marseille, Marseille has been one of the on the main cities of the riots when they've been the most violent. Marseille is in a state of emergency for years. There's been shooting in the streets for years. There was shooting between gangs about the drug dealing, and we're still there. And the French state has been completely failing in fighting mafias and fighting the drug traffic in France. And I think this is the parallel economy is a big issue in France because of this. And the fact that youngsters, people in these territories are having a life because of this parallel economy, and they're not trying to have a proper life and having a job or something like that, because there is not any chance that they will earn enough money for the lifestyle they want. So it's about the society we're proposing, how the bigger car, the money you want, the Tony Montanas of this world, and the fact that the proposal is not good for many of these people, and saying,
Exactly.
So Summer,
I'd rather go into a criminal activity than
I've got a very interesting
get into a
analogy.
country.
Alexis, I've got an interesting analogy for you. I think what's happening is a lot of the indigenous, let's call them French people, they are worried that the brown people who have come over are going to become the Count of Monte Cristo, and they're seeing them as the enemy, when really they should be seeing Fanon as the enemy, the one who did them over and who's causing all the problems.
But they're not
between
mutually
everybody.
exclusive, are they? They're not mutually exclusive.
Wait. There are so many points that that didn't make sense. In terms of this specific event, 1/3 of the people who were arrested were young, according to Macron. The rest were adults and old age. So this is not, people talk about this being a youngster thing and all of that. You look at the actual numbers, 2/3 are not young people, according to Macron. Then the other point of this whole thing was, we talk about this whole thing is in terms of, we're fearful or wherever. Look at the crime and exactly what's going on with just in Europe in general with refugees. We have no clue what's going on with that. And there's been no-go zones for years. There has been lots of increase.
Where's the evidence of this, Chief?
Yeah. What?
No.
The evidence.
I see this rhetoric all the time about the United
Suleiman,
Kingdom,
the
and when I
evidence
look
is that
into
it's not the first time it happens in France. It happened.
George, can I ask you a question? George, can I ask you another
It
question?
happened
and then you can go
18
ahead with
years
that.
ago
And then-
already, and we in the exact
Okay.
same configuration. These suburbs,
Okay.
these so-called
What was the
no-go zones.
configuration, George?
Sorry,
George, can I ask you what the if you can? I'm just going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to let you explain it.
sure.
So don't worry. So what was the configuration? Was it the police went and just shot up a young man? Like, what happened? What was the configuration 18 years ago?
18 years
I
ago,
don't know.
what
I
happened
actually
is
don't know.
that the police was pursuing two young men that were escaping the police because the police was trying to control them, and they found refuge in a high tension electricity transformator, and they got electrocuted. They died. And so the riots started in these same suburbs because the police was accused of killing them. That's the way it happened. So had they surrendered to the police, this wouldn't have happened. The same way, if the youngster that just died 4 days ago now, if he had cut the engine of his vehicle, and he had done the exact same way anyone would have done, and I'm sure many people in this space have been controlled by the police once at least in their life, he wouldn't have died. That's as simple
George,
as it gets.
George,
We don't know. I mean, we don't know what happened.
We know what happened because
we don't really
the
know
prosecutor,
what happened.
Alexis, the prosecutor of the Republic,
the prosecutor said what happened, but then
said exactly what happened. He reconstituted the whole scene. The youngster was the police tried to control him once already, and he fled away. And it was the second
yes,
time.
but there is also some witnesses.
George, are you talking about
this vehicle was signaled to another police patrol, and that's when it happened. This youngster had 15
Anyway,
mentions
one thing
in his
to
criminal
note.
case
I
already.
mean, no. One thing to note is that there was another youngster, 19-year-old, that was killed 3 weeks before Nahel in Avignon, in south of France, in the kind of similar situation. So one other issue is a lot of killings happening this
So what,
way,
the
and it
police should
shouldn't
stop
be happening
controlling
this way.
Arab people in France?
No, it's no. That's
Because that's the idea that's
I'm not
conveyed.
saying that at all. No, come on. I'm saying that there is an issue about the use of guns, violence with the police, or it shouldn't be this way. And of course, you should obey a law enforcing officer, whatever. But the fact that they are firing and killing people and doing false testimony, that's the main issue. Is that the cops just said that in their first testimony they lied, and that's the main issue. They lied. They didn't say what happened. No, they lied.
When you
and,
take
and
a
they
look at the
pretend.
video, you
and
see clearly that the
no,
youngster started his
It's
story
pretty much
when the police
the
guy
issue
was
there, and I
on
think
the windshield
justice
of the
will
car.
do what has to be done. I'm gonna go. Thank you for having saying this space. I'm sure that there will be more. And thank you for the spaces, Mario. It's great.
Definitely stay safe.
Alexis, thank you for coming. Much appreciated.
So, man, if you
Bye.
don't mind, I'm going to ask a question to George real quick. We're getting a lot of questions in the from the audience, and you can ask your question down in the bottom right-hand corner as well. Who are the people that are emigrating to France? You see a lot of people talking about, it's middle-aged, young to middle-aged men. We're not talking about families and such. And is that part of the immigration problem over there, or is that just is that overhyped?
Absolutely. So I'm going to explain to you quickly why it's only men. So first of all, it's only men because usually it's men are stronger than women, and they can afford, physically speaking, the fact of going through the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, so they arrive in France. There's a law now that was voted under François Hollande that removed the felony of being present in France while illegal. You cannot be expelled from France once you are in France, even though you have no right to be there. Okay? And afterwards, there's a second law that was voted in 1972 that is called the regroupement familial, which is in English family gathering, saying that you have a right to decent family life. Meaning that once these guys are present in France for 3 or 4 years, I don't remember exactly, they can decide themselves, without checking with the government, who comes from their family, from where they came. Meaning that from 1972, the French government took the keys of the immigration policy and put them in the hands of the immigrants. That is what's one of the crazy sides of immigration. And you can understand, adding to what I said previously, with the huge subsidies that are given to immigrants in France, that once these people come to France, all of their family now have access to the subsidies that we discussed. And because these people have a rate of procreation that is more than twice the rate of French natives, then very quickly you have a huge amount, a huge weight, a huge economical weight on these people. So that's, I hope that answers your question.
George, can I ask you a question as well? What's the actual French? I know you guys in your census don't ask the question about religious demographics, but what is the race demographics in France right now? Do you know it?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah, because what is the current racial demographics in France right now?
So the French, the overall birth rate is 1.8.
No, sorry. I meant, like, for example, how many white people are there? How many, like, black people are there? How many, like, what are the different
So that's the problem. In France, we are not allowed to do racial polls. You see, there are many cultural differences.
So you don't know.
And this is,
you don't know.
This is explained. There are average estimations, but the government itself is not allowed.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, so do you mind if
Um,
I ask a question to
I
Summer
just
real
wanted to
quick?
say,
Suleiman, Summer, I want to ask you this because Anna's not here. I wanted to ask this to her earlier, and she said that a lot of these refugees and immigrants that are coming into the country are suffering because there's a lack of education and employment, and they're being put in suburbs way outside of Paris. Why is that? Lack of education, employment. Are the French people really that racist where they're putting in policies that are
No,
systemically?
it is the whole contrary, Nick. When you take a look at the amount of money that is dedicated to people who live.
George, shall I answer the question that Nick asked me? Then you can respond.
Sorry, I thought the question was for me.
Oh no. So Summer, you go, and then George.
Go on.
Go ahead, Summer.
No problem. Thank you. Look, the thing is, Nick, first of all, I just have to clarify something that George is talking about. No one is defining the categories which are very, very important when talking about people coming into a country. You have refugees who are fleeing war and who are under danger. That's one category. Another category is immigration where legally people come over with permission, they do the relevant applications and so on. And then there are illegal immigrants who come in by means that are not condoned by the state. I have no idea why Chief is saying no, because they're just definitions. But anyway, so they're the three categories. Now,
And do those illegal immigrants then use the weaponized asylum laws of the countries against themselves?
Absolutely.
Prodigal, do you just want to talk for 5 minutes? Because I can't keep talking when you keep interrupting every 2 seconds.
I haven't
seriously.
spoken in a while. I'm sorry. I
No,
hurt
but
your
I'm just
feelings.
saying
It
you
was
go
just a
because
response.
obviously you've got something important to say.
Well, you mentioned my name though. The reason why
Prodigal's always got so much to say. Go ahead, Prodigal, bro.
No, it was a one-off.
Don't let
I
her
was
bait you
making
like
a
that and
comment.
not
You made it
respond,
sound
bro.
like it was 3D.
Don't let her bait you like that and not respond, bro. Go ahead.
Listen, the reality of the matter, and she knows it, and everybody knows it. It's not a left or a right issue. Both parties are co-opted, right? And to say that the native population's empathy and immigration and asylum laws have not been weaponized by foreign NGOs and organizations and people who give more a fuck about globalist bullshit than the native populations and how they're doing, then we're not having an honest conversation. It's just a big waste of time. This is the Catholic Church is playing a big role. Open Societies is playing a big role. There's NGOs across the globe. And then you have the multinational corporations who basically say, if you don't agree with this, you're a racist. I mean, they literally are trying to remove the word illegal from the lexicon. They won't do it for me. I mean, they are here illegally. And I'll end with that.
Go ahead,
The
Summer.
thing,
Let Summer respond, Chief. Go ahead, Summer.
Right. What I would say to that, Prodigal, is that I actually agree with a lot of what you just said. I think what's happening is I believe in sovereignty. I believe that a country should be able to make their own laws and do so in a way that's dynamic and caters for their specific situation. If the government is putting in policies that people feel are detrimental, do people not understand that you are scapegoating it onto people who are not responsible for the policies which you abhor? You are literally
but when those people show up to burn down your church and your home and assault you, you can't. Those politicians aren't the ones right in front trying to kill you.
Nobody here is condoning that. So I don't know why you keep trying to put fuel on fire, where the fire is not even there. You're literally creating fires. No one's saying
I'm not
that.
putting fuel. Listen, I'm American. I'm ethnic Albanian, and a lot of the shit the UK says about Albanian migrants and is the truth. After the Yugoslav war, if you were letting in working age, anybody, Albanians, Bosnians, Serbs, you were letting in people who life was worth a little bit less. And if you're from this region like I am, right? I'm from the third world. I experienced fucking ethnic conflict, genocide, the whole shit. You know you cannot take vast swaths of people, and there are going to be people who take advantage of this.
But who is saying
I know
that?
people
No
who
one
literally
on
in
this panel
America,
has said that.
they use chain migration to get their fucking parents a fucking card, and they collect Social Security and go back home. The whole system's been weaponized to fuck the native populations, and you're saying bleed your heart for these foreigners who literally are trained to hate you with your own tax dollars. I'm not going to do it.
Nobody has said that. You're just getting angry. No one is saying that there should be unfettered
It's July
immigration.
4th. I'm hyped. It's a holiday weekend. I'm not mad at you. You're taking it. I'm always like this. Don't worry.
You are some next level angry guy, man.
No, he's not angry. Prodigal's a G. Don't attack him. Right. Listen, let me just make a point, right? There's two aspects, and I get that people want to inflame the situation, and not Prodigal, because Prodigal's cool, yeah? But for example, yes, shooting a kid is wrong. Yes, burning buildings, all these protests, everything that's happening is mental. It is completely unacceptable. Both things are wrong. The only reason we are actually talking about some of these issues, just to like look at people's perspectives and like what are the underlying reasons why these protests are happening. But nobody, like this behavior that's happening over these 5 days is purely mental. Like that, why? And for me, the major issue with it is they're like burning up buildings, they're burning up places, and most of them places are non-affluent areas anyway, and they're gonna have to live there. So why make the areas that you live in much worse? It's ridiculous.
Because these
But
people
the
are
point,
stupid, and they know that the
exactly, I
French
agree,
people
George.
will
I agree
pay
with
for
you.
it. They know it because, as I told you
By
already,
French, you mean
Suleiman,
white people, isn't it? So that's where I disagree
Well,
with you.
are they getting
Suleiman,
drunk
They're in the
before this,
Suleiman,
like the BLM riots?
the
or no?
problem is it already happened in the past, as I told you. And they know now that the French people, with their French taxpayers' money, they're going to pay for it.
I mean, George, you know, you said to me before, and just correct me if I'm wrong, right? You said that basically, and just correct me because I don't want to missay what you said. So you said that basically immigrants were having double the number of children to the French populace. Did you say that?
Approximately,
Correct?
yes.
Approximately, obviously, you can't have the exact amount. Like, don't worry, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's 2.3% or something, 2.3 factor, right? And also, you said that the birth rate in France, or someone else said it, that the birth rate is about 1.8. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then, what that means is that the birth rate in, for example, the or the French population or the white population, however you want to call it, is something along the lines of 1.3, and for the other, I'm saying roughly, and for the non-French is 2.3 roughly, right? So again, when you've got a birth population,
It all depends on the number of immigrants.
Yeah, of course, there's a variety of factors. I accept that. We're just roughly speaking. So when you have a birth rate of 1.3, what's going to happen to your population?
So the fact is, that's what
Same that will
I
happen to
was
the
trying
US.
to tell you previously. It's the fact that you have an exclusively economic point of view on the matter. And you're considering that if there are not enough people, I'm not dismissing the objection. It's perfectly right to make such a point. But the fact is, doing so, you're ignoring the fact that people are not interchangeable. That if you take, you are reasoning. I'm caricaturing your opinion, of course. But if you miss 100 million people somewhere, let's say that all of a sudden France was empty of its population, 70 million. You took 70 million people from Congo, and you put them in France. You will say that these people are French because they will have a national identity card saying that they are French, but they won't be French. They will be from Congo. They will be Congolese. And you are applying
Except
the
when
exact same
except
logic.
when they win the World Cup, George. Except when they win the World Cup, then they're French.
What?
I said, except when they win the Football World Cup, then they are French.
No, and that's what I explained to you
Well,
earlier.
it depends who you're asking.
Because
though,
these
right?
people.
I mean, look, bro, they're winning the
Suleiman,
competitions. They use the darkies to win
Suleiman,
all the
if you make an
competitions, bro.
objection,
Suleiman, you're man of the match.
If you make an objection and you don't let me answer it, it's not honest. As I told you earlier,
George, I'm letting you answer. I've let you talk more than anybody else in the space. You've literally talked more than anyone.
That's
How can
fine.
you
That's
say
fine
that?
because I represent an opinion that
George,
may be not that
No, I don't mind
representative.
it. I don't mind you talking. Like, even though, like, on this panel, we've literally got everybody who's on your side except one person.
Suleiman.
I'm saying, George, look, I'm letting you speak more than anybody else. Look, because you made the point about not letting you finish. Look, I just want to be clear. I've let you speak more than anybody else. I've let you interrupt people more than anyone else. And I don't mind it. Like, please, I want to hear your opinion. Like, this whole reason for being in here is we don't mind people having diverse opinions. I've got a different opinion too, and we can try and get an understanding.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Each other.
Perfectly
Yeah,
fine. And I, as I told you, you're making a space about France. How many people from France are here in the speakers? I'm trying to give you my point of view as a French person.
Oh, we'd love you
That's
to
the
bring
only thing
more.
I'm trying to do.
George, tell me who to bring.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We had Alexis, who was a French person as well, and
That's fine. That's fine. That's okay. If I have no problem giving the speech to someone else. I'm just trying to answer a question you asked me.
No, go ahead, George.
So the fact is precisely what I just I don't even remember your objection.
It was about the birth rate, so it was like the Caucasian about birth rate in France.
So yes, and you made an objection about the French football team. As I explained to you earlier, France defines its citizens through the prism of their assimilation to the French culture. Contrarily, for example, to Germany, and I'm not speaking of the Second World War, of course, but it's still the way it is, you don't have a right of the soil, as we call it in France. In France, the right of the soil says that if you are born in France, when you will be 18 years old, you can ask for French citizenship. Such a thing does not exist in Italy or Germany. So this first point enables to understand a little how we perceive citizenship in France. And second, it's a point I already made, it's the fact that we conceive citizenship through the assimilation the mortar and of French culture, in heritage, literature, that you dismissed very quickly earlier, but that is the way it is in France. If you are able to speak, I don't know, about Victor Hugo or about French movies like Jean-Luc Godard, or that you like French cuisine and you have a passion for it, all of this contributes to you integrating, assimilating yourself to French culture and becoming French. That's the way it is in France. In France, it has nothing to do with having the right genes. By the way, about this, a very quick story about it. When the Americans liberated Paris, they were very surprised that black people that were in the American army were allowed in the cafes with white girls. They conceived it as completely crazy. This is a very quick story to tell you that as far as the Second World War goes, when there was still segregation in the United States, France had never such a way of conceiving the relationship between people. So this is a point that is very important and that Americans and Anglo-Saxons usually don't understand. It's the fact that Frenchness, let's say, comes through culture and assimilation to the French culture. It doesn't come through your blood. It can come through your blood, but it's not the only way of becoming a French person. I hope I made myself clear here. So for the French football, this is exactly what happened.
Yeah, let me go to Summer real quick. I do have to bring this up because it has been linked a lot in the audience as well. Elon Musk responded to a tweet earlier. There was apparently an imam that was bragging, saying, quote, France will become an Islamic country through jihad. The entire world will be subject to Islamic rule. The French will convert to Islam, be forced to pay jizya poll tax, or be forced or be fought against for the sake of Allah. I'm going to pin that to the top. Elon responded and said he's right. So I want to ask you that question real quick. Does that seem realistic? You know, is Elon right by saying he's right? Is that part of the issue?
Well,
go ahead. Is Elon right? Because I know you're.
Well, look. When it comes to Elon, I think he puts out mixed messages deliberately, so he can't be pinned down as to what his views are. However, I did reply to one of his tweets where I felt that his slant was unhelpful in relation to the situation. You're specifically asking about what an Islamic imam said. What people need to realize is Islam is not one homogenous group. We have many sects with many different views, just as Christianity has many different sects, many different views, and a lot of them disagree with each other. What that guy said, I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's the right approach to the situation. I think we need cool heads. We need to realize, okay, there's socio-economic reasons why this is happening. It's obviously, bad to see violence and destruction and things like this. And it's up to the government to implement policies that their people are happy with. There's no.
I mean, you can't say it's socioeconomic reasons when you have poor countries that aren't in this type of anarchy. Like that used to fly in the past.
You can say that.
All immigration is good and a benefit. And why does New York have a $4.3 billion deficit from the illegals? These statements don't apply anymore. We have the facts. Right, so I don't know how you can.
Yeah, you're mixing like different countries' issues up, and it's not right. We're talking about Europe here. I'm a European. I've lived. I was brought up in the UK. Whatever. Right. The situation here is that there is huge price increases, there's massive inflation, people are unhappy, you have people from impoverished backgrounds that are frustrated. The French have that revolutionary spirit where they protest anyway. Whether these people who that have been
Yeah,
on this
whatever the
space,
West is experiencing, the third
Let
world
me
is experiencing it
finish.
10 times that
Prodigal,
level. You're not seeing this type of chaos, so it doesn't fly.
Prodigal. Don't worry, well, we want to hear your beautiful voice. Just wait for me to finish, okay? Look, these people that are protesting, however much people may say, oh, they're not real French people, the thing is, a lot of them were born and brought up in France, and they have inherited that revolutionary spirit. And when they see things that they disagree with, clearly they are going to implement, the similar spirit in their protest. Obviously, it's wrong. We don't like the violence and all this stuff. But remember, people who are trying to inflame tensions between religions and between colors are stupid, because the demographic and the makeup of these people is varied. So you cannot scapegoat it. Like, Islam is not one massive group. Islam is lots of different sections from lots of different countries with completely different cultures.
And Summer, let me jump onto what you're saying. So look, the issue is this: like, Elon obviously does this a lot, and that's why I've got huge problems with him. He does basically stoke racial tensions a lot. He stokes hatred towards certain groups a lot. I mean, I don't agree that he does it. Like, let him do it to another religion, and then I'll say, yeah, it's cool. He does it to everybody, but he doesn't. He stokes it to specific people to cause problems, right? In this, what this Imam said, he said something which is completely extreme. It's totally unacceptable. And most Muslims, the vast majority of us, have written many articles smashing this ideology, even though, let's be clear, like, the US was in cahoots with these guys for a long time, right? Now, in terms of what they said, what he said is completely unacceptable. And no, it's not going to be Islamic rule in France, because what he's saying is nonsense, because the vast majority of people who are Muslims do not uphold this ideology. But again, it's another example of Elon Musk perpetuating using Twitter to perpetuate certain ideologies and hatred towards certain groups. So, for example, I'm a Muslim. I don't have them views. Prodigal, he doesn't have them views. Like, this is the point. What I'm saying, like, these extreme Yazan and a few others on here. Summer. The problem is when you use extremists, and this game was played before. Look, you're all old. Like, you're 20 years behind everybody else. This game was played in the United Kingdom for 2 decades after the September the 11th, where extremists like this guy, his words were used and propagated, and then it was used to terrorize a populace. What happened in the United Kingdom? They terrorized Muslims. They basically demonized them, and while they did, they propagated liberal leftist LGBTQ ideas. And what's happened? Christianity is dead. British values is now LGBTQ values. All the kids are becoming LGBTQ. Population collapse in the Caucasian population. You basically imploded, and British society imploded, or the alt-right imploded while they were attacking Muslims, because they ain't got no brains, they ain't got no smarts, they don't get what's going on. They easily.
Yeah, have you been looking at the
and they
birth
easily
rates coming out
control.
of the Middle East countries recently?
So yeah, I mean, I'm against Prodigal. I'm against the Middle East. I don't like the ethno-national methodological approach of where they do things. They have huge.
Oh, so you're a caliphate type of guy. You want the whole thing.
No, I'm not down with the caliphate. I'm against the caliphate as well. There ain't no caliphate as well. I don't agree with the idea of the caliphate. See, the Prodigal, you can't test me, bro, because all of these games, we've smashed them already. So let me go to Yazan. Go ahead, Yazan.
Hey, what's up? I'm gonna tell you, like, just how really things work. I am an immigrant. I studied in Europe. I've been all over the world, and, like, first of all, there is no way you can justify what's happening by saying, this is what Islamic religion represents, because that's absolutely what it doesn't. Islam.
But if you say socioeconomic, it flies, though.
Let me continue. Yes, you can take things out of context very easily. You can say, okay, look who's participating in those kinds of events, and saying, okay, that's the people. What do they want? Let me tell you, Europe provided an opportunity for a lot of Arabs that came there and hosted them and gave them opportunities. I know that because I was one of those people, and I saw a lot of my friends that had the same kind of opportunity, and those people are grateful and they appreciate everything they have. On the other side, there's people that felt mistreated, felt that they're not getting what they're supposed to be getting. They compare themselves to others that grow up in the same circumstances, and it starts to create some type of frustration where people start to question things, and it gradually builds up. Those people often get involved with illegal activities.
Look, I thought you're going to address directly what Yazan. I thought you were going to address directly what Suleiman said. But since you're not, which I don't mind, I'm going to give you the mic again. But since you're not, let me try to do that, because I jumped in.
Of course, Mario comes to back up his boy Elon. As soon as you mention Elon, Mario comes running. Go on, Mario. Go ahead.
Yeah, you just put in the group like, hey, I'm going to smash Elon. I'm like, all right, let me see what he's in for. So I was look,
and then he came running faster than you could say what.
No, I thought I wanted to hear what you wanted to smash, and then I heard the word LGBTQ. I'm like, here we go, spewing the same bullshit again and again. The death of Christianity, the death of Caucasian people around the world, and the death of the UK, and all that bullshit. So, look, I read that tweet by quoting that guy, the one that Amy Meck tweeted.
You read 2 words there, bro. That's what you did really well.
Yeah, so I read that tweet that Elon responded to. So I was pretty surprised. Like, I was like, this guy's talking about the French will, quote, convert to Islam, be forced to, by the way, you could have probably read it just for the audience knows what the hell you're talking about, but let me do that for you.
I already
did.
Who said this?
Don't worry, your boy's already done it. You guys have already said it to try and make Muslims look bad.
I'm glad Nick did what a moderator should do. So I'm just reading what the tweet says. It says, Iman brags, France will become an Islamic country through jihad. The entire world will be subject to Islamic rule. So this is a person who's very anti-Islam, I guess, Suleiman, or extreme Islam? I'm guessing extreme Islam.
Extreme Islam.
Okay. This is extreme to the level that they take it to next levels that we're not supposed to be there.
Okay, I understand. So then he says, convert to Islam, be forced to pay jizya poll tax. What's jizya poll tax, Suleiman?
If you're not Muslim, you pay a tax if you're from a different religion.
What?
That's only because they're not required to fight in war. That's the reason why.
Hold on, just sorry. I'm uneducated. It says that there's a tax. I don't want to. I think I understood it, but I don't.
Yeah, the Ottoman Empire had this. It was very, very.
But does it exist? Oh, okay. But does it exist anywhere now?
I believe it does.
It
yes.
doesn't exist anywhere.
Okay.
Like none of the Muslim countries. And when
In
it comes to
Suleiman's
jizya,
house.
Mario.
What was it? So what was it?
Let me explain one thing.
Hold on.
Prodigals, in my house, a prodigal's the collector. He goes in, he makes sure everyone.
So Suleiman, so what is the jizya tax?
So jizya is a tax which is applied.
You like how that sounds, huh?
Okay, go ahead, Suleiman. Go ahead, Suleiman.
Come on, prodigal, don't try, bro. Right, which is applied to, unfortunately, it applies to non-Muslims. And at the same time, there is a tax system for Muslims as well. And I was going to write.
Okay. So in Islamic countries, okay, no worries. But Islamic countries, they had a tax. They had higher tax for people that were not Islam.
No, it's not higher, but it's a different. It's just called something.
Okay, no problem. All right. So in 2017, so I'm guessing it was stopped a while ago. In 2017, France silenced my warnings by banning my Twitter account, dismissing the major concerns I raised about the perils of their open border policies. Now I had forewarned, those concerns have materialized. All right, so I'm just reading the tweet. Now, essentially, I think what would have probably triggered Elon, I'm not here to defend Elon. I want to kind of, you're going to be surprised. Okay, so I'm going to actually point out something interesting as well after that. So just saying, like, probably one of the main things that Elon probably want to bring attention to is that France silenced my warnings by banning my Twitter account. And like, obviously he's anti-censorship. This is probably what he wants to bring attention to. But let me go to another point though. We're talking about, now again, I don't have problems with immigration and assimilation or whatever, or different people all living together. That's my stance, and it's a very naive stance. But I'm looking at the percentages, man. Do you know what percentage of the UK population is Muslim? I'm sure you know.
About 3%.
6.7% as of 2021. Okay. All right. So Germany's at 5%. The US is at 1.1%. Canada's at 5%. But then you go to France. France is at 10%. Right, it was 7.5% 2011. It's 10% 2020, which again, I'm not saying it's too high, too low. Like, again, I really don't care that much about these things, and many people are not like that. But I'm just saying, like, if you look at the percentage in France versus other countries, it is much higher. It's double the second most country.
Check Sweden.
Yeah, Algeria, Morocco, they had colonies all over Africa. It makes sense. Right?
Yeah,
but what's the point, Mario? So
no, I'm just saying, like, the concerns. Now, this guy's going extreme, of course. But do you think that the concerns that there's this? Go ahead.
No. So there's a multitude.
It's 2.3. It's 2.3% in Sweden, Joe. Go ahead, Sully.
So you were in the UK, it's 6.7%. There's been there hasn't even been much of an increase in the 10 years. There has been an increase proportionally, but if you look at it numerically, there hasn't been a huge increase.
Yeah, but this person.
The reason why.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Bro,
Yeah,
let me
go ahead.
finish my
I thought you
point,
finished.
please,
Yeah,
because you mentioned
go
UK,
ahead. Yeah,
so I need to. And so the reason why there's been a collapse in the Christian population is because people leave Christianity and they become atheist, they become liberal, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, they
Now,
become smarter.
specifically
But go ahead.
I mean, I wouldn't say they become smarter. They're basically losing their children. They're losing their population.
Suleiman, my friend, can you stop kicking me off the panel, please? Two times to kick me off.
Are you kicking him off, Sully?
Kick him out. Kick the German out.
Yeah, he's been annoying.
Okay, so don't be annoying, man, or they'll remove you. Did you just remove him again? Who's bringing him up then? You and Nick need to work together, guys. He just keeps coming. One person brings him up, the other brings him down.
Right. Okay. So listen. Coming back to the point.
Yeah, Suleiman, you make a valid point, but what's your counter argument?
Hold on. What's his point? Protocol. What's his point? Yeah. What's the point?
No. So let me come to the France point. Yeah. So in terms of France, you have a scenario of a multifaceted reason why of course they've got a lot of immigration coming in. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to pretend that's not happening. Of course it does. This the reason 10%. In addition to that, as George clarified, the Caucasian population is not having kids. 1.3. The
that's the number you made up, Suleiman.
Sorry. Let's not say 1. Okay, so the Caucasian population, so the entire birth rate. Let's let people work it out then, because George is getting a bit emotional.
Not at all.
The entire population is 1.8. The entire population birth rate is 1.8, and then in addition to that, the non-Caucasian population birth rate is double, according to George. Obviously, we can verify it, but I trust that he's not making it up. Is double the non-Caucasian population. So when you have significant difference, when one populace is not having children and the other population is having children, that has a factor as well. So there's a multitude of factors that cause that population difference in terms of what you're saying. In terms of Elon's point, because I know you're here to defend your boy Elon, yeah, he does regularly comment, and he does a comment, or he puts a full stop, or he puts an exclamation, and it's just his way of causing engagement on a specific post. And generally speaking, it's posts about causing racial division in the United States, or it's posts where basically someone's attacking Islam, and that's quite regular when he comes out. And you'll see the type of people he engages with. It's very similar. There's a correlation. He'll never engage with certain types of people, and he'll engage with.
You're going back to Elon. I'm just talking about the Islam. Who did?
Can I jump
in, go ahead, Gilissa.
Mario,
go ahead.
I just want to.
And then Yazan. I know Yazan. I interrupted you, so I'll give you the mic right after Gilissa. Go ahead, Gilissa.
Yes, for sure. And thank you to Nick to kind of having me given the opportunity to intervene. I really wanted to come in to take the opposite foot of George. I heard George speaking earlier, about, like when the Western world is like typically France, started like to be really developed, and he took place from the Renaissance, he took all the departure from the Renaissance. And I was quite surprised, that I did not see Alexis or anybody who is in this room kind of correct George. George, that's a flat lie. I'm sorry to say that. But the Renaissance, started in the 14th to the 15th century. You guys already was like occupying Africa, and that was like slavery time. Period. One. Second, George,
when we were repelling the Ottomans from Vienna, is that when we were doing
history, my friend? But that's
thank you. Let me continue.
We'll discuss this afterwards.
Let me continue. George, I'm from Senegal. Today I'm living in the USA. I live in Vegas right now. I'm speaking from Vegas. So I was in Senegal. And then I took history in college, and one of the best colleges in West Africa, which is UCAD, University of Cheikh Anta Diop.
Yeah, but that's like being the tallest midget in the room. You might be the tallest, but what did you win?
Listen. Okay, we listen to you. You said the Renaissance, is when France took like all the departure to be developed. They were already developed. That's a flat lie. Today, Mario, and people who are listening here.
Yeah, nobody addressed this.
Let's see.
George addressed it.
That's why we didn't address it.
George addressed it. No, George addressed it. Listen, I'm just gonna make a point. I'm coming here to answer to George, because he's French. I couldn't speak in French, but so everybody can understand. That's not true, because France was already in slavery, occupying. They were in places where they were not invited to. So today, when I hear French people crying about immigration, I quite have a problem. And I hear George also speaking about when Americans come to free France. No, before Americans came to free France, African already had freed you. So that's also a point that you did not like put on a point on your comment. The other thing, when you talk about like the cinema and all the movies, you don't even talk about Omar Sy, which is like the least person who like actually participated on the like explosion and the beauty of French cinema. You know, you guys, the problem in France today, for me, it's not immigration, it's the lack of accepting the diversity that
Can
French
I?
have,
Can
the
I?
beauty of
Yeah.
yeah, Mario.
Well, that diversity is burning down the country and chopping off people's heads.
Hold on. So, Prodigal. Hold on. Listen, hold on. What do you mean, Prodigal? When you say things like chopping off people's heads, is that you just being dramatic, Prodigal?
No, you don't remember the school teacher? I forgot. He did something insulting.
Yeah, but that's. I mean, I'm sure you can find a story if we go on Google now. I'm sure we can find a story of someone's head getting chopped off in many other countries. Does that mean it's a problem of heads
No,
getting chopped
I
off?
remember worshippers going to Notre Dame under armed guard for fear of being attacked. Like, this is a situation
Mario,
that
can I
people.
play-
can
Yeah,
be
but bro, it's,
I
hold on,
heard
Prodigal.
shooters in the United Kingdom, but shooting down kids as well. I mean, you're gonna kill babies, bro. Like, chill out.
I mean, how many times is the guy arrested? For me, if you hit the gas and 2 cars are on your vehicle, it's open gate. It's open gate. You want my honest opinion?
No, but
If you're
bro, I think
driving a
Prodigal, can I ask you a
fucking
question?
car and you run
Prodigal,
off
hold
on
on,
a cop,
listen.
you're open gate.
So, Prodigal, let me ask you a question. How bad do you think the problem is in France?
I think they're fucked. I think Summer makes some good points. The left and the right. I mean, everybody's bought. They don't matter. They played it.
So how
I don't know.
how
We'll-
it
we'll-
seems like
well,
have you?
I
When
think
was the
it's-
last time?
well,
When was the last time you've been to France?
Me, it was probably in the 2000s. Not even the
Yeah, so
2010s.
I
But
go
last
there
time
relatively often, and you know, I have a business in France as well. I've had it for about 6-7 years now, and you know, I've got a lot of friends and family in France, and life is pretty good there. You know, I go to meetings, it operates well, so it's a democracy. It's got a lot of flaws, and we can all list
Yeah,
it.
but Mario,
But then
you're talking
I'll
about
tell you,
right now. How much energy packages ADA packages?
Prodigal,
Yeah.
can I just
like
get the chance here
right now,
before
I don't doubt that. Europe had a
Prodigal,
mild winter. Had a
my
mild
dear
winter.
friend, Prodigal. Let's not go there now.
Kaiser, I'll give you the mic right after. Just Prodigal. What I mean as well is that a lot of, and I would like to hear what Kaiser says after Yazan. Yazan's been, it's been pretty quiet, and after I muted him. But Prodigal, my point is that, you know, when I see all those videos and photos online, it genuinely looked like a war zone. I looked at it, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? There's a sniper on a building. There's you know, cars burnt and shops burnt and explosions. And I read the news saying explosions around France on fire. Then I look at it and look at the numbers. You know, the US, you know, Black Lives Matter was significantly worse. Now, I still have concerns. It seems to be spreading. I was reading an article. I didn't go into it yet, maybe over exaggeration, but there's neighboring countries also going through it. But I don't know. I just think that I'm with you. Actually, I've got a question for you. Let me do this, Prodigal, because we might agree on this one. Do you think, and just try to answer the question directly, do you think the main issue, you know, immigration, etc., there could be issues, but do you think the main issue that we face as a society is the increasing inequality, and that could lead to what we're seeing in France spread to other countries because the world's just having enough, and we're seeing populism increase around the world? That's a valid concern, and not trying to fearmonger, but it's a valid concern I have, is that the inequality is going to smash the world, smash us in the face. We're not going to be expecting it, and it's going to, you know, impact the Western world in ways we cannot imagine. I think it will take still at least another decade or so before we do that, unless there's structural changes. And, you know, any riot in any country could trigger, you know, could trigger a spread across other countries. Do you think that could happen?
I mean, I don't think we'll see a contagion of riots between countries. Europe's a different demon, but I mean, I agree. I was saying this a year ago when we spoke about these issues, right? I mean, I think right now you're not wrong. Europe had a very mild winter, but the war in Ukraine is still going on. Russia might back out of the grain deal, and points other people are making is right. Listen, if you have money right now, it's not too bad, right? If you're in cash, put it in a CD, a money market, you're getting 4%. You weren't getting that for years. You're guaranteed. But if you have to buy, if you are lower income and you got to buy food, you got to have rent, you got to pay your utility bills, have gas to get to work, you're being crushed. And as much as you say, yeah, I'm surprised Europe has held it together this well. And, you know, if Ukraine goes on another year and it's a cold winter, we'll see what it is. But I'll end with this. Mario, these policies weren't done by a vacuum. They were done, you know, neocons, neoliberals, you know, the lavender mafia, you know, these NGOs. And, you know, they can just remember who put them in place, because they're going to try to deny that they championed these, which you see some now trying to backtrack on.
Let me share some.
Mario, can I finish my point?
Yeah, Gilles, I'll let you finish your point, then we'll go to Yazan. And I'm gonna get you some statistics, Prodigal, on the amount. I think people underestimate how that gap is widening over the last few years. I'm gonna give you some statistics I can share with the audience, and then get your thoughts if you're as worried as I am about this. Gilles, go ahead.
Yes, I was going to finish and saying that, today, this immigration thing that we are analyzing, with people thinking that, it's how can we understand today that French is not a producer of uranium, but they're taking the uranium from Niger. France has no gold in their land, but they're having all the West African, like French-speaking country, gold. Today, as a Senegalese American, today we don't have our own currency. Like the franc CFA, the money we use is still protected by France. So that means, our countries can collapse the day France want it to. So that's one. We cannot have any decision since Britain was 1945. French decided that they're not going to lift their foot above African French-speaking countries. So that's the result of everything that we went through. Today, when I hear French people saying that, oh, it's because of immigration, how are you going to hold the resources of people and you expect those countries they are not going to do everything possible to come, join, or take the same route? You want to invite it to their countries, like 500 years ago, 600 years ago. Today, yes, they're not invited. They're there, and you guys don't want them. We didn't want you, when you came in. So now, let's live together. Accept these neighborhoods. Don't treat the neighborhoods, this banlieue, that's how we call it in French. Don't treat them as countries. Treat them as part of France. Embrace it. Like in 05 when we had a
But would you consider? But you consider? Sorry, is it Galissa? Les banlieues? Would you consider them? So the what do you call them in English? Les banlieues, the hood, not the hood, but there's another term for it. So do you the ghetto? Yeah, exactly. So the ghetto. But do you consider the ghetto? Is the ghetto? I know it's race focused as well, but how much of the ghetto is the poor versus X race? So I'm saying, would you relate the ghetto to the poor, and I'm kind of linking it to race versus equality versus wealth equality?
I would rate it to poverty and also
because let me give you a number. Let me give you a number, Galissa. And these are the numbers I wanted to give Prodigal. In France, the richest 1% of households now own more than 20% of the country's wealth. Okay. In the UK, the richest 10% now own more than half of the country's wealth. In Germany, the richest 10% own more than 60% of the wealth. In Canada, 40% of the wealth is owned by the richest 10%. Now, guess what? Look in the US. In the US,
and they're all donated to Bill Gates.
Okay, let's not go to Bill Gates. Let's not look the same way Suleiman. The same way Suleiman goes to LGBTQ. Prodigal goes to Soros and Bill Gates. Prodigal in the US, the top.
Not wrong. That's why I don't interrupt.
The top 1% of earners in the US, they now own more wealth than the bottom 90%. I know a lot of you might know this. The 1% of people, 1 every 100, own more wealth than 90%. And they're in 1970.
Yeah, when you don't trust us, that's what
let me
happens.
show you. That sounds concerning, okay? But let me tell you why it gets more concerning. In 1970, so 50 years ago, that 90% was 33%. That means the top 1% had more wealth than the bottom 33%. Now they have got more wealth than the bottom 90%. COVID didn't make it any better. For me, this is, and I was surprised by when you said, Prodigal, you don't think this will spread to other countries. So you don't think that either this one or a future one where riots could start spreading?
Not naturally. I mean, if other foreign intelligence agencies want to weaponize ethnic and
why not naturally? Why not naturally? People have had enough. People have had enough of what's happening in the inflation.
Because normal people don't burn down their own neighborhoods.
Normal people were fighting in World War II. Normal people do some crazy shit. You'd be surprised, and based on circumstances. Hold on, Galissa. Yeah, go ahead, Galissa. Did you say bro? Who said bro to me?
Yeah. So what I want to end on that is that with this.
Hold on. Who said bro? Who said Galissa? Hold on. Who said bro to me? I'm seeing. Who jumped in and said bro?
I said bro. I mean, you're talking.
Oh, okay. What do you?
I mean, like.
Go ahead. No, hold on. Galissa, just stop for a sec, bro. Why, bro? What bothered you from what I said, Nick?
You're talking about people. You're talking about normal people and burning down neighborhoods and such. I mean, that's not an accurate statement, man. I mean, I don't.
No, so I'll tell you what I mean.
But
yeah, so I live in Dubai where nothing happens ever. There's people too scared. But let me people are too fucking terrified and just there's a lot of money here. But let me explain what I meant and let me know if you disagree. I'm just saying if circumstances are bad enough, good people do bad things, and there's a lot of quotes that explain this. So, and I use World War II as an extreme example, where good, genuine people, your local teacher, your average Joe walking past you, you'd be surprised of how good, but how evil humans can be, just depending on circumstances. Bro, if my family's at risk, I'll do some horrific shit to protect them. If you're sitting and surviving, you'll do some horrific shit to survive. Now, some people will do worse things than others.
Mario, you're right.
But Galissa, you gotta
Mario,
hold on,
you're right.
Nick. Galissa, you gotta stop unmuting, please, bro, because I need to go to Yazan and guys. But let me.
Mario, you're right.
Yeah, I know you're right. I don't need someone to tell me I'm right. Let me finish. Let me finish it.
I'm shocked you come out with such a good point.
Okay.
Viktor Frankl said in basically Nazi Germany in the Holocaust camps, he literally said true humanity is found when you're in the most worst situation ever. That's when you find out true humanity.
Yeah. So in terms of okay, Nick. So let's you've got a family. I know you're not married and have kids, but obviously you got parents, you got brothers, you got friends. Okay. So Nick, would you say if let's say you're
bro, don't attack Nick. He's not an impressive.
You're below the line of poverty, okay? You make barely any money to pay to make food, okay? And you're struggling to find work because the economy is completely fucked, okay? I'm just saying hypothetically. I'm saying hypothetically. So let's say that you're barely making enough money to pay the bills, to feed your family, yeah? To pay the bills. And I know there's ethical ways of making that money, but let's say the economy is so fucked and inequality got to a stage where it's extremely difficult to make money and you got to buy food for tomorrow. Would you break into a shop and steal food for your family?
Well, first off, I mean, no. So we're not.
Let's
even
not do
going
the
to
intro
that
level
far.
philosophy.
We're not even going to that
please.
extent. We're talking about people that are going out on the street and fucking firebombing Walmart.
No, I'm not talking.
Okay?
I'm not talking, Nick. I'm not talking about those people. That's the thing. I'm not talking about those people. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about what we're seeing now in France. My point moved way past that because I think we've butchered that. I'm saying that if inequality continues to get bad enough, I just worry that what we're seeing in France could become more normal. And we're seeing an increase. I've given some statistics earlier. We're seeing that increase across the world. So I'm genuinely worried, and something we haven't discussed. We haven't, and we probably should. I'll try to invite Ray Dalio to come on the space to really discuss that concern. But that for me concerns me even more than immigration and race. That's my 2 cents, and I'm sure a lot of you would disagree.
Yeah, but immigration is going to exacerbate the cost of living crises in this country. You have to understand there's some connection.
But I've got a question for you. Like, wouldn't immigration, it harms one country a bit, but then benefits another country or benefits the people in those countries? So if you have a country that's really,
I don't think so. Listen, I'll give you an example. Right, France has a large Algerian population. Algeria has a booming natural gas industry. I mean, there is employment in Algeria if they sought it out. That's not what's being done. Europe was relying on Algeria this last winter, is going to be relying on Algeria going forward. So I just disagree. You look at some of these countries, economic asylum is not what asylum and refugee laws were crafted for.
All right, so hold on. Algeria average salary. Do you know what it is, Portugal?
I do not.
I'll give you the number. It's $17,000 is the average salary in Algeria. The average salary in France is 40,000 euros. So say $40,000. So about double. And then they've got
how far does it go?
Yeah, true. I've got to look at the PP, the purchase power parity. Unemployment. True. I'll get you that number. You're right. I should have gotten that number. Algeria's unemployment is at 12%. France is at 7%. So Algeria is not as bad as I thought, by the way. But still, you're using it. Not the best example. I know. The biggest immigration crisis Europe faced in our generation is obviously the Syrian war. And if you compare Syrian employment rates, Syrian average salary compared to what the Western world is, it is incomparable. So that's, I think it's difficult to argue that the people in those poorer countries wouldn't benefit from immigrating to better countries.
Sorry, Mario, but you made a big mistake in the numbers you gave. If I
may. Please. What's the?
You're eliminating the native population from that equation. That should not be the question countries ask. Are the immigrants?
The average salary in France is around 2,500
Are we
euros.
feeling?
It's not 4,000. It's
Sorry?
way from being 4,000.
Sorry?
The average salary in France is 2,500 euros. It's not at all 4,000 euros, as you said.
That's because when people in Europe talk about salaries, they talk about post-tax. Americans talk about a pre-tax.
Yeah, so
That's
precisely,
different.
I know that. And the fact is, the taxation of salaries in France is so heavy compared to the US. In France, more than 50% of your salary is taxed.
And George, question, but do you think economically, like if someone if you're an entrepreneur or just want to get a job, do you have a better chance of making money based on purchase power parity, like the ability of that, what you could buy in that country? Would you have a better quality of life in France or Algeria? I'm not saying this is a reason for you to accept. I think the French should vote on immigration. You guys, it's your country, you guys decide. But just having a discussion. Yeah, go ahead,
In
George.
France, they have better opportunity, but the fact is the Algerian immigration doesn't come to France for opportunities to work. They come to France for the social rights they acquire by stepping a foot in France. That's what I
Well,
was
look,
trying to
it's
say.
a separate discussion. But I think, George, I think no one would disagree that you, as a country, any country, you guys decide. You know, that's how democracy works. You guys vote and decide. You choose your leaders that will decide immigration for you. So, no matter what's better for the world or what's better for other countries, that's your decision. And at the end of
Yeah,
the day,
but that's not that easy, because the same way you had the midterms in the US, and the debates were crystallized around abortion, that enabled the Democrats to not lose that many seats. You know that as well as I do. Sometimes people don't vote for their interest. They vote because they're directed towards.
George, question to you, George. Do you think, and I know Yazan, I'm going to go to you right after, but George, the question to you is, do you think if prosperity, if economically France is doing better, if a country is doing better economically, and everyone's living more comfortably, there's better equality, do you think immigration will be as big of an issue versus if a country is not doing too well, if a country is struggling economically, or inequalities is on the rise? So what I mean is that go ahead. Yeah.
For sure, and this is what I try to formulate so far, because you have to take into consideration factors that are non-economic, and you are very not everything revolves around this. You have to take into consideration the factor of identity, the factor of a culture, and this isn't explained by numbers. And this is a very old debate between the French and the Anglo-Saxon world. In 1918, Keynes wrote a book that was called The Economical Consequences of Peace, about the Treaty of Versailles. And there was a French guy that answered him in another book that was called The Political Consequences of Peace. This is just to highlight the fact that not everything must be looked at through the economical prism, because the French people as a whole must preserve its identity. So even though the French were in economic bliss, they should still need to take a look at their identity and to preserve themselves.
I think, yeah, George, I think the point you're making is that economic factors are not the only reason for, let's say, revolutions. Let's take it a step further beyond riots. And Yazan, I'm going to get your thoughts on this right after. Economic factors are not the only, but I would say they're the main one. Like, there's a study, I'm just trying to find the source of it, that says if you look at the revolutions throughout history, 60% of them are because of economic factors, and the rest are political factors is 20%, social factors is 15%, and military factors is 5%. But Yazan, I'd love to get your thoughts on this particular point. And it's kind of, how that relates to France is obviously looking at what's happening right now, and how big of a role is race playing in this versus other factors, including economic factors. And then is there that concern of that happening in other countries because of the inequality we're seeing, and the economies aren't doing too well? Yazan?
I do think economical factors do play a role in what's going on, but they're definitely not the main driver. Like if you say, that the top 1%, top 10% control this much of country's wealth or whatever, but do people have a chance to make it to be top 10% or top 1%? That's the question. In many countries, that's achievable. Like, I'll give you an example. I lived in Germany. I know a lot of people that made it from nothing in Germany.
You can say that statement. When you say,
immigrants.
I know a lot of people that made it out of nothing, anyone could say that anywhere. It doesn't mean it's easy in Germany. Like, I just gave you a number of the percentage of equality. Like, making money is just, I don't care what any rich person says to seem cool. Making money is very fucking difficult if luck is not on your side.
It is difficult. I'm not saying, those people that are making billions, but I'm specifically speaking about being able to make it. If you grow,
Have
go
a
through the
family,
normal
have a
path,
home, have a life. Yeah.
educate. Exactly. Like, I'm just talking about basics. This is the main issue. When you don't have the basics, you have a problem. Like, what am I talking about? Having a roof on top of your head, being able to afford food, support your children, do the basic stuff for life that you need for life. When you're unable to do that, that's where problems begin. And that's where frustration begins, and people start to be willing to do anything to change that situation. And that's where you see the most common issues begin with. They start getting into, illegal activities, things that can generate more income. And that's a fact. It's not about any specific religion. Those things happen everywhere across the world. Wherever you see, I cannot make it, I cannot put food on my table, I cannot feed my children, I'm gonna find something to do. And often they get. Go ahead.
I was just to hop real quick in for immigration. A couple of points though. For immigration, you always have to look into who benefits immigration, and you look at CBOs from Middle East America, and it says that it drives down wages for lower and middle class Americans, according to the Congressional Budget Office in 2020, I believe. When you look at immigration, a lot of times corporations benefit, and there is common ground with some are talking about how corporations exploit people. That's true. Corporations are exploiting the the refugee crisis and the migrant crisis that's going on in France and in Europe, and even at some point in immigration in America as well. This is an economic issue where corporations are trying to take people and make them work for less and exploit their work and labor. However, if you're looking at this, in terms of a country shouldn't depend on a GDP or about economics. You should also have a value in what your country represents, who your people are, and what your values and are. So there is that fine line, and a lot of times people aren't really voting for more immigration. A lot of times people are not fans of that, and there's been some recent polling that's shown that, especially during COVID, and after that is still stayed relatively the same, the post-COVID with those polls. So, in terms of bringing it back to the inequality is a huge issue. But with more immigration, you start to see more of a stagnation of wages, in which people get employed to do work and labor for less money sometimes, because of corporations who want to hire people for less
By the way, in 2022, 65% of French people believe that immigration laws should be stricter. This is up from 58% in 2019. Now, I'm saying, like, Sully, whether it's right or wrong, and I want to get Kaiser right after, because I want to see why he keeps getting kicked out. I'm curious to see what he says. But Sully, just a quick question. If you look at those numbers, don't the French decide what they want to do? Like, if they want stricter immigration laws, that's their prerogative. Like, who are we to say anything?
Yeah, of course it is. If you want stricter, look, my thing is this: you want stricter economic immigration laws, like put them in, make sure they're fair, make sure they're consistent, and that's cool. As long as you're not doing it based on basic reasons that you were basically are being racist or you hate other race. As long as you're not doing it for that reason, because what will happen is a lot of people don't look at the long-term impact.
But that's it. But that's their problem. Even if they're doing it for those reasons, isn't that their problem, their prerogative?
No, yeah, of course it is. And then when their population collapses, then they'll continue crying. And then what will happen is you'll end up going into race wars. Because what actually happens in every single country, history shows this. What actually happens is when there's a collapse, when a country collapses, irrespective of what position you are, whether you're left, whether you're right, whether you're this, whether you're that, people forget about all of that, and everyone reverts back to type. There's a significant amount of literature proving this point. Revert back to type. So basically, people go back to their own race, and they basically fight on the racial grounds. So
yeah, we're going to prison rule. I mean, you've read Albert Memmi, The Colonizer.
I have not. No, I haven't lied.
Mario don't read.
I haven't lied. I read business books. I read the books that make me money. I don't think this one makes me money, Protocol.
Yeah, I don't think you read any books.
So your point is it's going to collapse anyway. So bring in more different racial groups. So when the prison rules break out,
in order to stop it from collapsing. No, I'm saying the other way around. So I'm saying you need immigration to ensure that it doesn't collapse. Now, if you're saying you're going to be stricter, fine, no problem, as long as you're taking every factor into consideration to ensure that your population doesn't collapse. And in terms of having significant immigration controls, there isn't an immigration crisis in the United Kingdom. I mean, we're letting more Ukrainians in the last 2 years than any.
How's their cost of living? How's their food prices? Up 20%, 19%?
No.
Let's get. All right, so
they don't mind. They don't. But no. The Prodigal. This is my point. When people cry about immigration, they ain't talking about the Ukrainians. We know who they're talking about. And you get the Ukrainians are the ones
who are they talking about, Sully? Who are they talking about?
Well, they're talking about basically dark immigrants, isn't it?
Wait, my
so hold on. As Nick spams our pinned tweets, let me ask Kaiser. Kaiser, What are your thoughts that keep you banned out of the panel?
Well, it's kind of important, real quick, before we do get Kaiser in here, because I want to let you know the reason I did pin this tweet is because there is a lot of activity going on tonight. We're looking at the pin tweet actually includes Marseille, France, where they're experiencing intense riots. We're talking about looting car dealerships. And the worst thing that we've seen there is a gun store has been raided. And now you have a bunch of rioters that have arms themselves.
That's going to give them more economic
rifles.
opportunity to address the
yeah.
socioeconomic issues.
Hey, I saw
Right.
today. I'll say I
It's
saw.
Jesus,
also
what-
worth mentioning that Marseille, Marseille, real quick, Mario. Marseille is one of the largest immigration hubs in France. Okay, the Algerian population there is massive, and they have had increasing immigration problems and crime problems there recently. And so that's
What's
it's
the numbers,
interesting that
Nick?
that's
What's
one of
the
the hubs
numbers?
of
What's
rioting
the
tonight.
numbers, bro? Nick, what's the numbers? I guess
All
Mario
right.
Hold
doesn't
on, guys.
ask
Hold
that.
on.
Mario doesn't ask that.
Yeah, I was googling it, so I was about like no jokes. As you're saying, I was actually typing it up to find the numbers. Marseille, he wins actually. Nice try, Sully, but Nick just crushed you.
I'm not
Nick
saying he's
fact
wrong. I'm not
checks.
saying he's wrong.
Marseille's at
I'm
440.
not saying he's wrong.
Marseille's at
I just know
100.
Nick didn't know the numbers. He just read it somewhere and put it on there.
Yeah, well, you don't need to know the numbers. I think if you know, he has his own sources.
I think it's called verifying.
Yeah,
daily
he
source
he
and
can
not
he
just
can mention
the
information. He
propaganda.
can mention information from valid sources.
COVID was real
Marseille.
as well, and the numbers were real, and so many people were dying, and let's not check the
So
numbers.
I
We're
have
not talking.
numbers.
We're not talking about COVID. I give him.
have-
Let me give him numbers because he doesn't know how to Google. Marseille is
have the
140.
numbers.
I have them too. Thank you. 142,000 in Marseille, 120,000 in Paris, 53,000 but that's not percentage. Funny enough, like we need to see percentages of the population because obviously
Yes.
Marseille has a bigger
So
population
in
than
Marseille,
Toulouse.
you have approximately 800,000 people that live there. Okay, in Marseille, and of these 800,000 people, you have approximately 200,000 that are Algerian, meaning that you have 1/4 of the Marseille population that is Algerian.
That's 33 legions, people, who, if you
And that
speak Rome.
is only speaking.
Okay, so hold on. So this is crazy numbers. Hold on. This is
Sorry, but that is only speaking of the Algerian population. You have the Moroccan population, the Tunisian population, and the sub-Saharan population that you have to take into.
George, over what time period did they come over?
It's in.
how's he gonna know that answer, Suleiman?
It's
Really?
from
That's
2020.
that's important, bro, because
Suleiman,
people shout these
you asked for
numbers out,
numbers,
Mario.
they are given to you, and they're not from the 90s. Okay, they're from now,
Okay,
from 2 years ago. So because
what
they
you're
are
saying?
problematic.
200,000 people, George? Are you saying 200,000 people have come to Marseille in 2 years?
What?
Did you just say that the 200? I'm saying that figure of 200,000. What period have they come over? And I'll explain why I'm asking that question, because Mario thinks it's not relevant, but it is. Because of course people have come over a significant amount of time. Like I'm in the UK, but I'm third generation. So my parents came in immediately. My grandparents, came in like in the 1960s or whatever it may be. So when you're gonna add me to a figure, it's very much different than somebody who turns up in 2023. So when I'm asking you that question, I'm saying the 200,000 people that you're referring to, when did they come?
I don't know.
So are you
But
talking?
I'm not
Are you
sure.
talking? Are we talking about Marseille, by the way?
Marseille? Yes. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
Marseille. So
talking about
Marseille.
Marseille.
Okay, let me get you some numbers. So obviously, what determines if someone's Algerian or North African? I'll have to check that. But Marseille's number, but these numbers are pretty crazy. Where's Marseille? It's just disappeared. Marseille is at 32%. But there's another one that if you go up, Marseille is really small compared to others. If you go up, Saint-Denis is at 42%. Leblanc, Mesnil is at 40%. Aubervilliers.
Are these estimations, Mario? Because George said earlier that they don't do census on race.
I don't know who doesn't do census on race. I'm sure there's some.
There might be other organizations.
There's many other organizations. Yeah. If you look at North Africans in Saint-Denis is at 53%. Let me see. What is the population?
Stop. Every town you're listing, every city is on
By the
fire.
way,
Right
no,
now.
okay,
Why are you trying to rub it in and pretend like, oh, look at how many migrants are here?
No, I'm not rubbing it in.
Okay, Mario, may I jump
Exactly,
in
bro.
quickly?
Let's get.
This guy, man, he's got no ethics at all.
Kaiser,
Let me jump in, Mario,
Kaiser,
before
yeah.
Prodigal goes on. So thank you, Mario. First of all, thank you for getting the mic here. I mean, and I have to say, Mario, it's a very complicated discussion and matter. and it needs an honest discussion. Actually, Mario, you're making the best points in this discussion, I have to be honest. Because the problem here is there are a lot of bad faith actors.
Kaiser, you talk a lot of sense, bro.
No,
Come
Suleiman,
on.
Suleiman, this is called
Suleiman.
Suleiman. This is called pandering to the host to make sure you always come up on stage.
Yeah.
It's a very smart
No,
strategy.
Oh,
Continue, Kaiser.
right, well done,
Smart
Kaiser.
strategy.
Oh, Kaiser, the Germans just don't
Mario.
stop. The Germans don't
So, anyway,
Mario,
guys,
be
guys,
careful.
guys, let's. Jokes aside, let's see the point. Let's see the point. Go ahead, Kaiser.
All right.
No,
So I've
Kaiser,
never.
go ahead, Kaiser.
Okay, no, Mario, I'm never pandering.
I know.
I'm
You don't
just
even
direct,
follow me. You don't even follow. Oh, you follow me now.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Now I follow. Yes, I follow.
Thank you.
Obviously. So the
I
thing
wonder
is,
why.
for example, let's take. I mean, yes, I would totally agree. First of all, it's not a Muslim thing. So get it out of the system here. You know, it's not the Muslims are rioting. Very important. Okay, but then again,
but all
it's
the
also
rioters are
important-
Muslims.
Hold on, George.
Look.
How do you, so George, do we have a percent? Kaiser, I'm gonna let you just let me ask a question to George, and I'll let you answer George, and then Kaiser continue. What percentage of the rioters are Muslim? I don't know, but I'm curious, George. Do you know?
You have so many videos.
So many videos. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, they come.
Okay, George.
They come from these suburbs.
Mon ami. I'm from Germany. We have also a lot of Muslims.
So you're
here,
from
but the
Germany.
thing
I'm
is-
from France, and we're speaking of France here.
Okay,
Who's
but
the
you're
more
saying
fit
it's a
to
Muslim
tell
thing.
you about the
Whoa,
situation?
we fought 2 world wars over this.
Guys,
You Kaiser, attack him.
now, guys, please continue.
But Mario,
Kaiser,
do you-
continue, please.
But Mario, do
Kaiser,
you
don't
see
let your
here?
country
Okay.
down. Don't let the French
Please.
attack you. You know they ain't gonna.
Let him finish. Go ahead,
Jesus
Kaiser. Go
Christ.
ahead.
But Mario, you see, that's the problem here. It's a dishonest discussion from every side. So look, even if all the rioters would be Muslims, how much, let's say, how much share would they make up of all the Muslim population in France? So you see, you can spin every statistic as ever you want. I'm living in Frankfurt, Metro, actually in Offenbach. We have 80%, let's say, of the population here is with migration background. It's fucking peaceful here. So every country has certain dynamics. So there is not one immigration crisis. Every country has certain dynamics. There's a reason why what happens in France happens in France. And that has been boiling for a long, long time. I remember the movie, George, you will remember it as well. La Haine, very great movie. Actually, watch it from 95. In English, it's called Hate. The same scenario. Basically, what you're seeing there, a young guy is being killed by the police, and the riot starts in the Paris banlieues. 95.
You know, I
movie.
hope Germany burns next. Just
No,
hearing
no,
it,
prodigal,
just so you know,
prodigal,
Okay.
Jesus, prodigal.
Kaiser, continue.
Prodigal. But
Prodigal, I'm
Mario-
trying to help you not get cancelled, man.
Ah,
Kaiser,
Jesus.
go ahead, Kaiser.
But the thing is,
I'm not trying to
obvious-
make money off.
Kaiser.
Obviously, it's important to respect the land of the laws. Very important. So anyway, Prodigal and Mario, the thing is, there's a certain reason why what happens in France happens in France. It will never happen in Germany. It will never happen here, due to a various combination of reasons. So, and the most important one, and I do think it's socio-economic. What happened in France is we have created an underbelly of society. And France is actually a very classist, elitist society. And Yazam was actually alluding to it. The strength of Germany always was we have a very strong, let's say, working middle class. So as long, obviously, as the economy is going well, that was the strength. That didn't mean that we have integrated.
Georges, you let him talk smack about France like this, man?
No,
it's not-
Kaiser,
it's-
finish off, please.
Yeah, okay. So, and my point basically being is, yes, it's socio-economically driven. France, these problems have been existing in France for the last 40 years. And the severity of today, and I know the riots in the 90s. The difference is just back in the 90s, you didn't have social media. That doesn't mean that I don't want to small talk or to these riots here. And they're absolutely, I mean, there's no justification for that. But to say it's a Muslim thing is wrong.
It's
but,
better to say it's a cultural thing, because that's what it is. I mean, if they
maybe
words about-
it's a cultural thing,
Yeah.
because in Germany we have a lot. The biggest, let's say, Muslim group are the Turks. You would never see that. You would never see that happen here. Those are law-abiding.
because they make money off the kebab. They make money.
Anyway,
Alright, guys,
so anyway, Mario, I will. Yeah, I will continue to listen here.
Yeah, join.
but actually, you're spot on.
I'm always spot on, man. I'm glad you see it. Look, guys, I'm gonna do. We haven't done a subscriber space in a long time. So I'm gonna do one now. So for anyone that doesn't know, we do subscriber only spaces. On my account, usually we do them after the main space, and usually those are unrecorded, uncensored, and we don't even talk about a specific topic. We kind of shoot the shits and argue. So we haven't done it in a while.
I'll be in France tomorrow.
Who's speaking now?
Mario's orders.
Can you hear someone speaking,
Nick.
Sulaiman?
It's Nick.
Who's Nick? Who's Nick?
Some intel.
I thought Nick is on on Air France right now. But yeah, Nick, are you gonna jump?
Mario,
I was just in Paris last week. I'm telling you, I regret not being there right now.
Yeah. Are you
Anyway, Kaiser, you made some great points. You didn't have to suck up to Mario. You've earned your right to come
No.
again. Don't suck up to the guy, bro. It's all right. It's all good, bro. You're back.
Look, can I just
see how he keeps muting you, Kaiser? Look at Sulaiman. How dirty player.
Don't do that.
Dirty player.
Mario, I just want that one statistical figure. Very important.
Yeah, I'll give you one that's very important. Mario is right 100% of the
Alright.
time. What's yours?
Oh, okay. One figure, because let's call a spade a spade. The problem is immigration. As it's happening right now, and everyone is blaming Merkel. You can do that. I don't care. It's not. Let's say it's very. It's not very positive for the macroeconomic outlook. The problem is in Germany, a figure was released recently of all the, let's say, net migration from outside the European Union since 2016 into Germany, 3.2 million. Only 25% of those people have a full-time job, basically means social security paying job. So you're paying into social security, that means you're full-time. That's a problem. We must call it out. And this is where the liberals in Europe are turning a blind eye to it.
Thanks.
So, I mean,
all right, let's listen. My pleasure. Let's do the subscriber only space. So guys, I'm going to start it in right after this. I'll immediately start it. And Yazan, you could jump in as well there. I know you haven't spoken here, but it'll be good to get your thoughts there. But it's kind of more shooting the shits and just relaxing and talking about anything we want to talk about.
If you don't listen to the space, you realize that he did speak, but you know.
He did speak.
You don't have to.
Okay.
He's trying to make you spend $1, so they make a decision. Like, you know.
All right. Anyway, guys, if you want to jump into it, I'm going to start it off now. See you.